Welcome everyone to Legion Gaming. I'm your host Donnie, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Deucy.
I'm back, everyone.
You are back, Deucy. It's been quite a while. We're doing episode 77, a little bit different. We had plans to do this a few weeks ago, but you were down with a pretty bad sickness that had you down and out for a little bit.
Some wild virus. It was probably the worst virus I've ever really felt.
It seemed like it because it was pretty crazy, and usually, you're sick for like a week or two, and this was like, wow, I'm out for like almost 3 weeks. It felt like
it was bad. I tried to go back to work a little too soon, and I'm like, nope, I'm down for the count. Yeah. I was missing out on the recording, though. I almost wanted to join you guys for Terminator last week, but I would have been coughing up a storm.
I think it would have been really funny if you had been on that one and you just been like, kind of like trying to talk through your voice.
Yeah.
And you sound even more different, like you don't even sound like yourself or something.
Yeah, this will be a good test. I haven't really talked for a length of time. I mean, we just had the holidays with our families and stuff. That was a lot of laughter and fun, but this is going to be like our typical runtime straight through with talking. So excuse me if I'm clearing my throat in your guys' ears.
It's okay. It'll be sort of a bit of a sound check for them, keep them awake.
Yeah.
If anything.
Yeah.
But we did have episode 76 a couple weeks back. I did do that with Vito. It was a really fun time. We went through some of the Terminator games, and it's more about the impressions of Terminator 2D No Fate, which I've been really enjoying.
And thank you for stepping in.
Yeah, thank you, Vito, for stepping in on very short notice.
Yeah.
I pulled that together pretty quickly, and I think it went fairly well, given that short amount of time.
It made sense, too, like you guys with the Ghostbusters episode. I don't remember playing too many Terminator games back in the day. Like, definitely RoboCop versus Terminator, and probably T2, the arcade game, and that was it.
Well, the funny thing is Vito hadn't either.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like, okay, well, I'll share my experiences with pretty much all the ones I play, which is most of them.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun, too. But yeah, it was a fun episode when we got to like all the Terminator 2 bits and whatnot. And what we were going to do originally was, for episode 76, was sort of a 1995 year in review. I've been talking about this for a little while with Deucy, where we kind of just want to take a year, whether it's significant or not in some way, and kind of re-examine it. We thought it'd be fun if it would have been like a 30th anniversary in 2025, but as of this recording, we'll be in 2026, so Happy New Year.
Oh yeah, Happy New Year, everybody.
Because this will be releasing just after 2025 ends.
This is a 31-year year retrospective.
Yeah, I'll still call it 30th because, it'll be, was this January 2nd or 3rd? I know what day it'll be when this gets released. So it's
really
just
early.
Short after, yeah. So either way, I thought it'd be really fun if we would cover a year and kind of take a look at what was releasing. And this year in particular, in 1995, it was pretty significant because this is sort of the transition from 16-bit gaming to 32-bit, and more importantly, it's sort of the bigger transition into 3D gaming. This is really the first landmark year when gaming really became a huge deal as far as like trying to do more 3D stuff, and it was still very new and fresh, and a lot of things worked.
I feel like in the next few years, if we do specific year looks for episodes, it'll be a lot about the games, but this one, like you said in particular, was a transition, and a lot of stuff happens. Like E3 shows up, and a lot of these systems come, and some of them go really quickly, but they were just trying to throw everything at the wall and fight each other.
Yeah, and we'll get more into it too, but it's even like the Super Nintendo and Genesis were firing at all cylinders at this point, even though we're going to like the next generation of consoles. This is where they had really established themselves, and their library was getting really, really strong right before they were starting to sort of dwindle, like in 97, 98, when, the 16-bit era was finally kind of on its way out. And interestingly enough, 95 is also sort of that final year for the NES at this point, where I think the last release was at 94 with Warriors Woods, or was it 95?
94 with a handful. I think it was Mega Man 6, Wario Woods, the Crash Test Dummies.
That's right. I didn't realize that game was so late.
Turtles Tournament Fighters, but 95 still had some NES releases around the world, just not here in North America.
Yeah, right. So 95 is just a really interesting year. So I think it was perfectly appropriate that we kind of talk through it for its 30th anniversary, 30th plus, I guess we could say. Where do you want to split?
I don't know why, but this year sticks in my mind a lot too. We were both in 5th grade, or just starting it. It was the first half, and I don't know why, but when somebody says the numbers 95, I just have so many flashbacks to the games, the Christmas time, the school, everything.
Well, for me, I think this is when, we're 10 years old. I think, at least for me, it's at a point where I'm getting older, but I'm also sort of understanding my taste for gaming more, right? I'm also getting more into the hobby, because before this, we were really young and we'd rent what we could, and we just kind of like, it was really like we'd look at the front of the box and be like, okay, well, I'll try this out, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like when I was 10, I was a little bit more cognizant because I was a little bit, older and better. I was able to understand these things better, where I could kind of pick and pull news pieces apart, or like read more magazines and whatnot, because I had more access to them in some way.
Oh yeah, my Nintendo Power subscription was going strong, but I might have been actually like reading the articles more so at this point than I was in the past, where I was just looking up maps and cheat codes.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I think this episode is going to be a fun time because it's our first sort of examination of a year. And like I said, it's going to be a really big and fantastic year. And just before I get to what we've been playing, Deuce, I should shout out our socials if you want to reach out to us. You can get us by email at LegionGamingPod@gmail.com. And we're also more prominently on Instagram at Legion Gaming Podcast, where you can just find us posting about game stuff, our collections, videos, all kinds of random stuff. We like to talk about games. So if you have anything to say, feel free to reach out to us. Deuce and I will always be shooting the shit about games. That's our bread and butter, so to speak. But Deucey, what have you been playing for this month that I really haven't seen you?
Not too much while I was sick. Last time I was really sick, I said, I got into Stardew, and then that became my game of the year. But this wiped me out, so I was just watching TV. And then finally, when I was coming out of it, I played a lot of Terminator 2D No Fate, like you had on the last episode. My thoughts probably mirror your guys'. It was an amazing time. I still haven't beaten it. I got to the last level, did the whole game over thing, but it didn't annoy me. Like, I was like, wow, this is classic. This is like back in the day. I think what helps is that the gameplay itself isn't too complicated, and you can just like shoot right through it again really quick.
And I think that's really the key difference, is that it's, in some instances, there's some bosses that have those bullet hell kind of attacks, I'll call them.
Yeah.
They're not too intense, but also you can very easily learn the patterns for the bosses. So like when I died the first time at the final boss, it's like, yeah, it sucked, but at the same time it's like, okay, well, I understood what I can do now because I got hit with that. And there was only 3 to 4 attacks. So I think that's what's also great about this game, is that you can repeatedly go through it, and it's learnable. Like, you're not sort of at the mercy of having like a billion bullets come at you at once. Keep things right. It's a little bit more,
or trying to remember, like, what's the other 2D game that recently
Neon Inferno. Yeah, I know you had a hard time with that one.
That one just has a lot of different moves.
Well, because you're shooting the foreground, you're shooting the background, or you're shooting the foreground, the background, you're shooting all around you. I love it for that. You're
parrying and stuff.
Yeah, you're parrying. But that one is definitely a different level. I think that one's like more like Metal Slug with multiple dimensions, where this Terminator 2D No Fate is kind of like, it, like I say, really felt like it was more influenced by the Sega CD game. Like, you'll have to watch the video or something on it, but it just takes like all the elements of some of the earlier games and made them good.
Yeah,
right. That's the big difference.
I mean, I was very impressed with you playing as multiple characters, but like Vito, I was like, why am I not the Terminator in a game called Terminator?
Yeah, that part was really surprising. I wish you had more levels, because I did go through the alternate paths, and there's really just, I think there's a total of 2 levels you play as a Terminator, maybe 3. And the rest is either, Sarah Connor, future Sarah Connor, or
John Connor,
or future John Connor. Yeah. So that part is a little bit disappointing, because, like you said, you just want to play as a Terminator and just destroy things.
Yeah,
you're a machine. What more could you want?
I liked in the one bar brawl, you don't really lose life; you lose time when you get hit in that one.
I thought that was really smart.
That made sense too.
Yeah. I really like that one a lot, because that was one thing that we talked about, like in Terminator 2 for the old games. It's like, why is the Terminator so fragile?
Yeah. He shouldn't have a life bar at all.
Yeah,
it's like a Superman game. He should never have a life bar.
This is a machine that destroys humanity, and all of a sudden some bikers are giving him trouble? Like, what? Like, I don't understand. Why didn't they have a bunch of bikers in the future then?
It's like, oh, look, these random bikers just saved Skynet's future.
Yeah, we don't need John Connor.
Skynet should be hiring them.
Yeah, it's really funny. So I'm glad that 2D No Fate ended up being as good as I had hoped, because obviously we were very, very hyped before it released with all the trailers and all the press stuff about it. And I'm glad that it was worthwhile, because that was really one of my favorite games of the whole year.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have put it on my top 10 for the year, but it would have been an honorable mention for a Game of the Year episode, right? Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
That damn good. Maybe like number 10 or 9. I don't know.
Let's see what else. Oh, instead of getting Metroid Prime 4, but I am excited to finally play that.
I really want to hear what your impressions are when you get that.
Yeah,
I loved it, but there's some things I hated about it. So I'm curious what you'll think, because you're always like you're sort of like you'll hear what I say, and you're like, okay, well, there's some things you're right, but I actually like this more, or something, Yeah,
it's odd that we've been sort of opposed to our opinions of Metroid as of late. Like, you love Dread, and I'm like, nah, pass.
Yeah.
So I might do that with 4, where you were like, okay, I loved it, but I hated some parts, and I'm like, no, I liked it all the way through.
Yeah.
No, but instead I got back into Metroid Prime Remastered, and I played it when it first came out, but it was on my old original Switch, and it was too dark. It was like Doom 64 dark, and I could not get anywhere in it. And now that I have a Switch 2, things have changed, and I'm just loving going through it. And there's a lot I actually forgot, because I haven't really played through this since it first came out on GameCube. And so, like, the entire level of the Phazon mines, I was like, oh, whoops.
I actually forgot about that part too. I was wondering if it's because like it's not a bad part of the thing.
It's kind of short and towards the end.
Yeah, I found myself doing the exact same thing when I first played the remasters. Like, I totally forgot this part was in here, and then I'm reminded, of course, when you get to like, oh yeah, the artifacts.
Yeah.
My one sort of nitpick of the game, which isn't even really a nitpick.
It's funny because I remember all of the items I should have and where to use most of them, but then I'll be going through a part and I'm like, shouldn't I have the X-ray visor by now? Shouldn't I have the grapple beam by now? Where is all this stuff? Then I remembered that I played it the first time with a strategy guide, so I was just following it page by page, and it was
that's interesting,
very concise. Whereas this one, I'm doing it blind, and it's very Metroidvania. It was an amazing turn into 3D. I really love that game.
Yeah, that game is really timeless for me. That one really is one of my favorites of all time, just because of the significance of it. And that is the benchmark as far as first-person Metroid, which I know, it's kind of a silly thing to say because there's only like 4 of them.
Yeah.
Right? But Metroid Prime 1 is by far my favorite. It is just so good. It really just encapsulates everything that was Metroid before it and makes it into a 3D game.
It is very much, you know how like Ocarina of Time was the 3D N64 version of A Link to the Past, basically.
Yeah.
This Metroid Prime is the first-person 3D version of Super Metroid.
Yeah, that's a perfect parallel for that, where it's like it just took a 2D game and then applied everything and expanded it.
They even use a lot of the same music and the same sound effects and everything, so you're just like, this is what I wanted it to feel like.
Yeah.
They played it safe to go into the next generation.
Which is ironic, because also, the whole first-person thing wasn't safe, technically, right? So it's incredible that they pulled it off, and that it still holds up decades later, and the remaster is just a fantastic remaster. It's really good on the Switch.
Yeah, it's basically how I remember it looking on GameCube, but I know it's like 10 times better.
Yeah. Like I think we talked about back then, like it almost feels like it was nearly a remake, but they call it a remaster. So whatever they did, to all the in-game assets, it doesn't matter. It looks really incredible.
The last thing I found, and I wish I kind of had this while I was sick, it's called Cast and Chill. And it is just that. It delivers on the name. You are a fisherman, but you're not like, I don't know, like the deadliest catch guys or anything. You're going out on the most calm and serene lakes with amazing pixel art graphics, and then you just throw out your line and you catch some fish. Every time I catch a largemouth bass, I think of our buddy Mike playing Black Bass on regular Nintendo.
That game came to mind right away when you sent me the trailer for this.
Yeah.
I really thought of Black Bass and Mike playing that thing. I figured this game would be perfect for him.
It's also, you're not really trying to get anywhere. You catch fish, you get money, you upgrade your equipment and your boat, and sometimes you can buy new licenses that get you in new areas of fishing. But that's it. And then occasionally the guy at the shop will say, oh, hey, like, so-and-so caught this size of a fish. You want to try to beat them with it? And then you go out with your best equipment, and like this, the first one I did was a walleye fish, and this little girl had caught a 19-pound one, and I just obliterated her record with like a 30-pound something. Now it's mounted when you go into the shop. It's mounted up there on the wall. But yeah, I'm really enjoying that game. You just pick it up while something's on TV or whatever, and you don't have to really pay attention. You just throw out the line. The controller itself will vibrate when you get a nibble, and then you start reeling.
That's great.
Yeah.
That game's really inexpensive too, because I was curious about it after you'd sent it. It's only like $11 right now. I think it's normally like 14 or 15. So seems like a nice buy-in price for something you just kind of hang out with, and like you said, just chill out with some fishing.
It's one reviewer called it right on the impulse buy level of price.
Yeah, I find myself in that sense too, where if something's like 15-ish, maybe a little less or whatever, I'm more inclined to be like, well, I'll try it because it looks pretty good. Like I always go back to Guns of Fury, right? That was like $14-15, and that was one of my favorite games when it came out this last year. So that's a good buy-in price, especially when you get a good amount of value out of there.
Yeah.
For what I've been playing, I've been really kind of agnostic after I've been, I beat like some of those bigger games like Ghost of Yotei.
Now you need a palate cleanser.
Yeah, I've been struggling to stick to one. So I did start Borderlands 4. I've been enjoying that a little bit so far. It's a little bit slow to start because you always get like the crappy weapons in the beginning, so you're trying to sort out like what I want to use. It's definitely more intense this time around. Like there's a lot more enemies around. There's a lot more action, which is it's fine because it plays like Borderlands, so it feels great. I couldn't tell you what the story is. I really don't care because the Borderlands story's never been hot on story for me.
I feel like it's the same every time. There's a vault and you got to go find it.
That's exactly what it is. Like there's someone trying to get a vault key in here, and I have to get it before them. I don't know. It's whatever. It's really just the meat of the game is just the guns, and leveling up and everything. So I've been kind of dabbling in that. I did finish Mafia: The Old Country, which I talked a little bit about in the Terminator episode. It was enjoyable. Like, I don't think I liked it as much as Vito did. Like to put it on I think he had it on his game of the year, right? Top 10 or something like that. I enjoyed it. I just think it's a little bit too linear for me. Because it's so much of just drive here, have a skirmish, which is what I mentioned last episode, drive back. And that's most of the game.
That was basically Mafia 1 and probably Mafia 2 for the most part. Even though they touted open world maps and everything, it really didn't let you do that.
Exactly. So, and then the open world, so you can sort of, when you're on the open world, it looks a lot bigger than it is. They did include like a free roam, free DLC, which I didn't really try. Because I actually ended up trading in after that. I was like, well, I beat it. There's no reason for me to go through it again, so let's trade it in.
Is the story at least fun?
Yeah, that's the thing, is the story kept me. That's the only reason I played through, right? Because the story was really enjoyable. But it's for me, it's a perfect like 6.75 or 7 out of 10 game where it does nothing bad. It does nothing great. Like the gunplay is totally fine.
It's actually, if you think about it, kind of a return to form compared to Mafia 3.
It is. Yeah. So it's it's a great game to play through once. Like I think it's perfect for you because it's on Game Pass. So you just you could do it in a weekend, right? So I had a solid time with it. The open world stuff, there are things that you can kind of collect. Like there's newspapers, little trinkets and whatnot, and little beads that are like your you can add to like your. You have like a rosary, and those have like different abilities, right? Like you get increased. Or it's easier to aim or something like that, like just those little perks.
That's hilarious to think of it that way.
I love that part. Yeah. Like this definitely nails Sicily. I think that's, like Vito said, it's really great in that regard. For me, it's just the story is front and center, and that's all it should be. But then like all the gameplay bits in the middle, they're just fine. Like they're literally like the literal vehicle to get you to the next part of the story, right? So that was enjoyable. The last one I actually got into last night. I'm only going to talk about this recently because like we hung out last night, we had dinner and everything, and then I got home and I wasn't really tired, so I got into Marvel Rivals again. Out of nowhere because they added Gambit, they added Rogue, they added a ton of characters. So I played a few matches of that last night and this morning, and that game, I talked about it when it came out. Like I like it because I can kind of get into a game for a few matches, enjoy it, get my fix, jump out, and that's kind of the point I'm at now, where it's like it was just something that I could get into for a few matches. I don't know, I know they have Deadpool coming. Like I'm actually surprised at how much content they've been adding, like they've promised.
Yeah.
So it's been really fun. Like it's an enjoyable time. It's definitely a game, like I mentioned previously way back, where it's totally dependent on how much your team actually can play. Like this morning I got into some matches with some people who are just absolute garbage. Like I have 3 healers on the team and no one's healing. So what I do is I tend to role switch, where it's like there's sort of like the tank, there's sort of, I think it's called like a Vanguard, where they're sort of like the damage DPS kind of characters, and there's healers. So I rotate through depending on what I think the team needs. But it's like if I have 3 healers, we don't need me healing people when they're not doing anything.
No, but
anyway.
you need to heal yourself.
Yeah, right. So it's like it's really funny where it's like that dichotomy of the game. It's like it's you could get in a great match where everyone has like this sort of synergy where they're all playing their roles correctly, or you have somewhere I was playing like the Smart, where it's like, what are you idiots doing?
Wasn't I know because this is based on Overwatch and those types of games. But wasn't there a thing in Overwatch? I didn't play it too much, where like a certain type would lock out if there were too many on the team.
So that's always been a point of contention, especially for Marvel Rivals, is role locking. So I don't know, maybe in competitive they had it, because I had played this before on Series X, and I started on PS5, which I had to start a new account, but then I later found out this morning that you could link your account, so I was able to migrate my account over, which is great.
Yeah.
But competitive mode doesn't open to like level 15 or something like that. But in the quick match, like it's not role locked, so it's like that's why I had 3 healers.
Yeah. I
had 2 damage people and no tanks. So I'm like, well, I guess let's play a tank, because everyone just wants to play their favorite character apparently. You know? But again, like it's a fun time. It's just like any game, it's up and down, right?
in this case, I know what they were trying to do, and it's awesome. Like, it kind of took focus away from Overwatch for a little bit, but like, here's a game that's like that, but with characters you know. But at the same time, like you said, people are going to play as their favorite characters, so maybe they should have done it to where, like, you could have Spider-Man, but he has like 3 different types, where if he's wearing the black suit, he's a tank, or if he's wearing this suit, he's a healer. Like, they should have done it so that you can still play as your favorite character, but then maybe change up the roles.
Well, I think, at least how I perceive it, is that they have that in mind already, where they know people are going to be sticking to their favorite characters. Because like I really installed it again because Gambit's on there, and he's really fun to play. Like, he's a little bit hard to learn. Like, I had to kind of grasp on like how his decks change, because you can kind of alter between them and how it buffs your teammates or debuffs your enemies. And that's really wise, because I think they design with the intent that their characters are locked to their roles, but they're also designed in such a way that, you know, you can kind of play with, you know, multiple roles in one team. But the other half of that is you have to have your teammates who aren't idiots, right?
Yeah.
You have to make sure they're actually being effective healers. Like, 3 healers is fine if they're healing.
Yeah.
But if there's 3 healers and I'm dying over and over, and I'm supposed to be like Penny Parker, the tank in the mech suit, and I can't stay alive, well, we're not going to win or capture an objective, you know? So I think that's part of it, where they're probably, I have to imagine they're cognizant of like people just sticking to one character because someone's going to play as Loki because they love Loki, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to switch around. Where for me, like, I have favorite characters in each sort of role or class, but I enjoy playing as all the others because, frankly, like, all the characters here are really well designed. They're all pretty fun to learn. It's just a matter of like what playstyle fits you. And there's like 30 or 40 characters, something crazy. It's really incredible. So again, like, it's a good distraction for me sometimes. Like, I don't think I'll pay money to get deeper into the game, and it's still a free to play game. So it still has like the UI is filled with like a bunch of currencies and like a bunch of just crap.
Well, my favorite part about that is, like, it's not pay to win, and they do a lot of fan service with the costumes.
Yes.
And that's all I want from various Marvel games, is give me like tons of costumes, because they have decades of history.
Yeah. And I think that's really the biggest thing I appreciate about this game, is that you don't have to spend any money if you don't want to. Like, if you just want to get your fix in, like I do, where you play a few matches a night, or if you want to, pop in every now and then, you can do that. You just have to kind of reacclimate yourself to how the characters play and everything like that. But that's a small concession. Like, you're not paying anything for the battle pass stuff or anything else unless you want to. It's purely cosmetic, which again, if you want to spend money on the cosmetics, there's a lot of cool shit in there too. Right? Yeah. So it's a fun time. I didn't expect myself to get distracted with that, but I was like, last night I was like, I'll play some Streets Rage 4 and I'll play some Marvel Rivals. So.
Well, that combination that you just mentioned reminded me that I played right before I got sick was Marvel Cosmic Invasion.
Oh yeah, I did play that earlier this week too, because I finished up all the challenges in there finally.
Oh wow!
And I unlocked all the extra stuff in the vault. I really enjoyed that game.
I am almost done with the main story, the first run through, and then I got sick, and I was like, I tried to play it while I was sick. I was like, this is like upping my heart rate and upping my fever, and it wasn't working out. But I really enjoy that game for some reason. Like, I thought I would really like the characters that I've always grown up with, like Spider-Man and stuff like that. But Captain America is just bad,
he's really fun,
freaking ass.
Yeah, he's really fun to play as, because his shield. One thing I love about these games, and we'll kind of I'll parallel this to X-Men 2, which we'll talk about later in a little bit. But they don't make your abilities cost health, and they actually want you to use your abilities.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing that sucked about some of the early beat 'em ups, is that it was almost a detriment to use your mutant abilities, because they wanted you to like lose your health or whatever else.
And if
they encourage the use of it.
If you had a really cool looking move or a screen clearing one, it would take some of your life, your super move. But yeah, in this one, you can just combo to your heart's content and then tap in another guy, or not even tap them in, but like hold the button so they attack a little bit.
It's very Marvel vs. Capcom in that regard, where it's like you can extend your combo or your juggles depending on what sort of team synergies you have.
Yeah, so I've had a ton of fun with that, and it's funny because I somehow deduced, how you unlock with those cosmic cube things. I deduced where all of the outfit changes are.
Yeah, you showed me that, which I thought was funny.
And I was just like, I know this one's going to be this one. I know this one's going to be this one. So I've gotten all of those first.
It's really good. I hope this is another game that they add the survival mode in.
Oh yeah, it's perfect for that.
It is I love it every time. Now with Absalom, with the roguelite stuff, like it makes so much sense. Every beat 'em up should have some sort of survival mode, like endless, infinite mode. 2D No Fate also has. I haven't tried it yet. But Cosmic Invasion, it's by the Shredder's Revenge developers, so I imagine they have to have something up their sleeve. Like it's gotta be, and I'll pay.
They'll probably be adding characters too, which would be
I
cool.
think they got to, yeah. But it was, again, this is another game where we were both very much anticipating it, and I didn't think it was going to falter. It's Shredder's Revenge developers, so I was like, I knew it's going to be really good, and it's freaking fantastic. I really enjoy it.
I think Shredder's Revenge still takes the cake for me. I think that would be number one in our recent beat 'em ups, but. This one is racing up the list.
Yeah, I still think it's Street Rage 4 for me. I won't consider Absum up there because to me it's like a roguelike beat 'em up. Yeah, I mean more like traditional beat 'em ups. But one thing I really like about Street Rage 4, and I've always liked, is like I saw someone make a comparison for it too. They said like it's more of a technical beat 'em up, right? Where for me I like that, where it's like you kind of take advantage of your invincibility frames, like with certain attacks, you can juggle and everything like that. And then Shredder's Revenge is sort of like the benchmark for arcade beat 'em ups in that sense, right?
It's like Tekken versus Soul Calibur.
That's a fair comparison.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah, it's really just like, what flavor of ice cream do you want today?
Yep.
You know? Yeah. But Cosmic Invasion is up in that upper echelon, I would say. I know it's a little bit early to say, but it is so tight and so fun to play and so well done that I think it's a fantastic beat 'em up. It's really, really good.
Yep.
Right, Deucy? Well, I guess we should get to 1995 and venture into our DeLorean here.
I was going to say, travel back in time 30 years.
I like it. Let's do it.
It came from the third dimension with its own brain, its own voice, its own legs. There's only one problem. It needs your eyes. Virtual Boy. See it now in 3D.
Right, Deucy, we are here on episode 77, the 1995 year in review. A little bit different than our sort of game of the year, best of the year kind of stuff. We're taking a look back 30 years ago. And 3 decades.
And after all the news and reviews, we will kind of have our own little game of the year awards
we'll have a little bit of awards in there. Yeah. So this is a little bit, we're going to kind of trying to be like reasonably comprehensive here. Really, like we just want to kind of talk about what was going on in 1985 in the gaming world, what was releasing at the time, some things that were notable, like any news bits that were coming out. I even got like a little bit of a cheat sheet here where I took note of what was on the cover of some of the more infamous magazines like EGM, GamePro, Nintendo Power.
I want you to like screenshot that and put it on our Instagram because if we say it out loud, it doesn't do it justice. Like I cannot believe over half the year EGM had Mortal Kombat 3 on the cover.
And we'll talk about this too, but I'll tell you this, because if you look at that, how many times it was on the cover, and then you look at the top 10 games sold in the US in 1995.
It was the top, wasn't it?
Yeah. So it's like, it makes sense, but again, you're right. Like, it's really shocking. So we'll get to that. I think this is a fun episode because it's always fun to look back on things. And for us, we always love looking back at games because that's really what this whole podcast is predicated on.
This is a fun one because we're going to have a lot of memories that we're going to share, but then there's going to be a lot of like 30-year hindsight that we can look at and go, oh,
exactly.
I wasn't, as a 10-year-old, I wasn't fully aware of this happening, but that's interesting.
Yeah. So we're kind of going to go quarter by quarter because there's not like a whole lot of games we're going to cover. We're just kind of briefly touch on them because we don't want to go deep diving too much because we do have a lot we kind of want to get through today.
And we might cover those in future episodes.
That's also fair. There's probably a lot here.
Or we've already done them.
Yeah. So we'll kind of start with some of the main game releases that happened early in the year. So in Q1, actually, before we even get to that, let's talk about sort of what gaming was in 95. So where things were, right? So at this point in 95, the Genesis and Super Nintendo were locked in a very intense console war, which of course all of us know. If you're listening to this, you've heard it endlessly. At this point, the Genesis had been outselling the Super Nintendo for the last 3 years around Christmas, which is a big deal because...
And I guess because I was a Nintendo Power subscriber, I never really noticed that. And I was a Nintendo kid. I had Nintendo, Game Boy, Super, nothing. Well, my dad had the Game Gear, but like, I would not have expected. I thought Nintendo was wiping the floor with them, but
it seemed like
not really.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I always thought they were almost even because I'd always see stuff like you go to the store. There's just as many Genesis games as there are Super Nintendo, and there's just as many covers that have Genesis games for Super Nintendo.
A lot of games were coming out for both, and sometimes they were different, sometimes they were exactly the same, and so I always preferred Super Nintendo versions of things.
Yeah.
And
I think so until 90 or 91, I believe Nintendo had I think they had 96% share of the console market, which basically means that's it. They own the whole thing. And then by, I think, 94, somewhere around there, Sega had been a split. So it was 50-50 between the two. I don't know if there was, maybe SNES had a little longer or more. I forgot which one was which. But basically, it was a lot more even than what it was a few years ago.
It's funny. I did this for a college class. I did the console wars, and it was all about the stats and everything. And I think what happened was like Super Nintendo came out, and the news, the way they covered it was like all these parents were like, why do I have to buy a whole new thing for my kids with these just so they could play these new games?
What's super about it?
And so Sega just sort of snuck in, and they had been with the Genesis pretty much since the NES times. And they were like, hey, we haven't changed. Come see us.
Because I think that's, again, that's something we talked about before, where the Genesis, at least when I was younger, assumed it came out around the same time as Super Nintendo, because sort of Sonic was sort of that marker, right?
Yeah.
That's when it really just took off running, for lack of a better term there. But, the Genesis had been around since 89. It wasn't until Sonic that's when things started really to change. And that's when Super Nintendo had just launched as well. So that's when they were locked in this heated battle all throughout the early 90s. The Sega CD had also been out by this time. I think that was like 92, 93, somewhere around there. So Sega was already sort of dipping its toe into the future of gaming. I think that's one thing that I'll always give Sega credit for is, despite their failures, they were always trying to be one step ahead of everyone. So no one's ready for the Sega CD format necessarily, but they tried it, right? Like there wasn't a big library of great games, but they were the first to try it before even Nintendo did. And Nintendo tried to do a CD-based system before they dropped out of that.
They who came out with the sort of online aspect first? Was it Super Nintendo or was it the Sega Genesis?
So Sega had Sega Channel before. I don't think you could play games online back then, but it was really just...
No, that's what I mean. But there was
a digital distribution service.
Yeah, and like Super Nintendo had the same thing too with like the F-Zero stuff. And
well, it was the Teleview in Japan.
Yeah.
So that was the thing. So Sega Channel was available in the US, I believe, but Satellaview was not. So there was no sort of digital distribution, which is a crazy thing to say in the early 90s. There was no such thing for the Super Nintendo here or Nintendo. So Sega had tried that.
That was another thing where Sega was sort of ahead of their time with it.
Yeah. And exactly. Like they were, again, like really forward thinking. Whether or not it was successful or not, they had ideas on how to push gaming further.
It really could have been, but they shot themselves in the foot. And like, I mean, we could do a whole episode on Sega alone because there was a civil war going on at Sega.
Yeah, while they were destroying Nintendo, there was inner turmoil that would cost them everything. Yeah. So then, Sega CD was out. 32X just came out at the end of 94. And I'm going to mention that because we're going to have the Saturn launch in 95 and that whole mess as well. Mm-hmm. But again, like at this point in early 95 or when 95 starts, Sega and Nintendo were locked in a heated battle as far as like just console supremacy at that point. Both are releasing tons of great games. Like Sonic 3 was out. It was one of the biggest games ever. Sonic and Knuckles. Donkey Kong Country had come out.
And then 2.
And Donkey Kong Country 2 in 95.
Yeah.
So really just to set the table, like this 95 is a big year for the 16-bit systems, but it's also really interesting because this is when the 32-bit systems first launched, like the CD-based ones, and more particular about the Saturn and PS1. Also, we'll talk a little bit about the Virtual Boy, which was Nintendo's first massive failure, right?
Womp womp.
Yeah, so that's why 95, it's a really significant year because there's so much happening in the gaming world. There's a lot of great stuff. There's some bad stuff, just like every other year. But this is really big because like 2006, 2005, this is kind of like the transitional year, like, when we're going from PS2 to PS3 and 360, and that had a rocky start as well, right? Like if you look at that, the whole HD era was such a mess to get into. Like I always think back to 2006 when Dead Rising came out, and if you had a CRT TV, oh my god, that font was impossible to read.
Same with Banjo and Kazooie Nuts and Bolts.
Yeah, so
Jesus.
Yeah, so I think that's really what we'll talk about here too, is that their 32-bit launches, while they were significant because it was the first step in 3D gaming, it was it was a lot of hits and misses. Like some things worked, some things didn't. Developers are still trying to understand 3D gaming in a console sort of level.
It's funny that like the best transition that I can remember is from PS1 to PS2. And
that felt very clean, and that was a generational leap.
And from N64 to GameCube, that was a generational leap for Nintendo.
It was, yeah. So it's really like HD was that big of a deal, and in this case, we are switching from, again, 32-bit or 16-bit to 32-bit. Also, CD formats were becoming a norm.
2D to 3D.
And 2D to 3D. So that's why I think when you do these big sort of seismic shifts in technology, like the HD era, you're going to have a rocky start before things get going, because obviously the PS1 would dominate everything in just a couple of years after this, right?
Yeah.
So 95, to reiterate for the billionth time, huge year for gaming.
And then to cover that, E3.
E3. So this happened in May. So let's go through a couple of the key releases in Q1 first, then we'll get to the Q2 stuff.
Oh yeah, May.
Yeah, so it's just January, March. I got a few things here because, again, it really seems like the middle of the year and fall is loaded, which is expected because a lot of big games come out towards the fall for the holiday releases. So I only captured a few big ones for early 95. There's Star Wars Dark Forces on DOS. That was the first time it was released, if you can believe that, 30 years ago.
Is that the one that was recently redone?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
The first-person shooter, I think it was a build engine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also Bust-A-Move, which was known as Puzzle Bobble on the SNES. That's a great puzzle game with the little bubbles and you match 3 kind of thing. Mario's Picross. I remember seeing ads for this. I never learned how to play Picross.
This thing was everywhere.
It was.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it in your Nintendo Power all the time.
Yeah.
And the last mention I have here is X-Men Game Master's Legacy, which was the second in the Game Gear, second in the Game Gear line of X-Men games, which we covered way back in our Marvel and X-Men episodes.
Was that the one I played on your emulation?
I don't remember if you played that or the third one. I can't remember if you played Mojo World or the second.
It was whatever it was. I got lost in the first level.
Yeah. And well, we have some awards at the end, and it's interesting because I only chose a few different things different from yours because of how much I played them at the time.
Yeah, same here.
And that was one of them, right? So it's I put that down because it's significant to me in some way. Q2, some of the games we have here. Kirby's Dream Land 2 on the Game Boy, that released. The Adventures of Batman and Robin all came out for the Genesis and Game Gear around May and June. Mortal Kombat 3 was just coming to the arcades in April, and there's going to be home ports in October that we'll talk about because MK3 is a huge deal for 1995, despite everything else going on. And now we'll get to E3 because E3, when at this time I was too young to really understand what it was, so I didn't know what was going on.
Same here.
Right? When I got older, E3, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, was like the source for game news and game launches and everything to get hyped about in the US, at least, because I think Japan had like Tokyo Game Show and a lot of other things going on. But E3 was, when I was a teenager, that was the thing I was looking forward to every time. I remember my buddy Brandon tried to get us to go to E3. Like, he even set up like a game developer name for us to try to get like credentials. We were called Smoking Gun Games.
Nice.
But we were like 17, 16. We couldn't, there's no way we could make our way to LA.
Yeah.
But E3 was first in May 1995. This was the first time that they had like these huge exhibitions for all these developers and companies. Of course, in this one, Sega, Nintendo, and Sony were the 3 big ones. And at this point, Sega, they were really focusing on the next generation of consoles. In this case, it was the Sega Saturn. This was announced at E3 for the US, like it was expected to come out in September 95. But Tom Kalinske, the president of Sega of America, dropped a pretty big bombshell at E3. He said, by the way, the Sega Saturn is going to be in stores right now. And he also announced a $399 launch price, which, it's easy to be critical about console prices now, which are going more and more up because we have a bunch of tariffs and other nonsense going on. And also there's a RAM shortage that's happening right now that because of all this AI garbage that's going on. So consoles are getting more and more expensive. But $400 in 1995, a lot of money.
Yeah.
So what this also had done is that when he announced that it was released, he had mentioned that 30,000 Saturns had already been shipped to retailers like Toys R Us, Electronics Boutique, and Software, etc. But what happened is that they left some big retailers like Best Buy and Walmart out in the dark. They're like, hey,
this blew my mind when I read your notes.
Right. It's kind of shocking that they did this because really the anticipation here was that they wanted to get ahead of Sony's release with the PlayStation. And I think this ultimately killed the Saturn before it even started.
Oh, for sure.
Because what happens, they had sort of a smaller launch lineup. They had they had games like Daytona USA was out. They had Panzer Dragoon, Virtua Fighter. That was really like the big key game. Some of the big key games on there. Clockwork Knight, which I remember playing all the time at the Blockbuster kiosk. It was Mario 64. Then I'd shift over to the Saturn to play Clockwork Knight because it wasn't like a fantastic or amazing 2D platformer, but I loved it enough to play it while I was waiting there. So that had released, and all the other retailers like KB Toys, Best Buy, and Walmart were obviously very pissed off. They're like, hey, like, you blindsided us. So what they did in return, they're like, we're just not going to carry your Saturn or your games. So you lose some of the biggest retailers before you even started. So it really sucks that the Saturn got off on the wrong foot right at the get-go.
I feel like I wasn't totally aware of this because back then we didn't have Best Buys or Walmarts really in the
We
area.
didn't. We had a Kmart's, and that was really the big sort of department store we had.
And we had like a Circuit City.
And a Sears.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the most we had for electronics. Like, I don't remember seeing a Best Buy for like until like the early 2000s,
Yeah.
I think, when we got a Target as well.
And we had a KB Toys, but I never went there for games or anything.
I
really.
went there all the time because it was closer to me, right? So you lived a little bit further than that. But I used to go there for Christmas shopping all the time. And like my brother would get tons of toys on the cheap. So, and there's also one like in at the mall nearest that's near you. But again, like, you'd have to drive out for that. It was easier to go Toys R Us.
I was going to say, for some reason, we always seem to go to Toys R Us for games specifically.
Yeah, exactly, right? So you had options, and Toys R Us was one that did have the Saturn. So Nintendo was also here, and they were pushing the Virtual Boy, which would come out, which we'll also talk about as we get towards August. They're also talking about the Ultra 64, as it was called at the time. I remember seeing that in every magazine, the Nintendo Ultra 64. It was supposed to be the next generation gaming, which... You know, at this point, the shock had come over people where they said, you know, they're sticking to cartridges, which isn't the best idea when those are far more expensive. They have less capacity, and Nintendo really just did it because they felt like that, you know, well, it's a format we're used to. We're not quite sold on CDs yet. Yeah. We'll just stick to cartridges. And then the big one was Sony's showcase. They announced the PlayStation. It was coming out in September with Twisted Metal. They showed games like Twisted Metal, Warhawk, Ridge Racer, Ballerina to Shinden. And their thing, you have to understand with the PlayStation, I forgot what episode you and I talked about this, but they were in partnership with Nintendo to release a CD-based add-on for the Super Nintendo. That fell through when Nintendo went with Philips and said, oh, you got a Philips CDI?
Yeah.
We'll work with you. Here's a Mario game, Hotel Mario.
History of dumbest decisions
One of the
ever.
worst things ever. And I feel like that is like the sort of butterfly effect, or what's another metaphor for that, where it's like, if that had gone differently, like the whole gaming landscape would have been different, right?
Yeah.
Like if Sony had actually made the PlayStation from Nintendo, we'd be having probably a totally different conversation that I can't even fathom to understand what it might be like at this point. So at this point, Sony's like, all right, Nintendo, well, we're going to make you eat your words. And they but they showcased a PlayStation. And then in a literal mic drop moment at E3, I don't know if I got his name, but basically like one of the executives went up to the podium and he just said the word $299 and dropped the mic and left to like all this applause and cheers. And what the significance of that is that they're saying like, okay, you're launching the Saturn today at $400. Sucks for you. We're launching a PlayStation in September for $299. $100 savings, and we're showing all these games.
Yeah, if you just have the patience and wait a couple months, this will be much better.
Yeah.
But all he said was $299. I think he had a huge presentation set up, and then when Sega came out and did what they did, he was just like, nah, never mind.
Yeah,
$299, I'm out.
You have to, I think for me, like, I have to respect the confidence in that, where it's like, you're not going to talk about anything else, because you know the price point's going to matter. So you can talk about how it's $100 cheaper, and that's all you need to say. And you literally, like you said, I think you said $299, but he said $299 and just left.
Yeah.
As quickly as he said it, he was gone.
Yeah.
It's something really fun to watch on YouTube because, you know, it's like grainy VHS video, and like you just see the crowd erupt because you're just like, oh shit, like he really did that.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible and pretty ballsy, I would say, from anyone. Because again, the PlayStation wasn't proven quite yet. We'd seen, not we, but, you know, videos were shown. There was a lot of previews about it, but it wasn't anything like you didn't have the sort of established credibility of like a Sega or Nintendo, because this was the first Sony system.
No, like Sony was known for TVs and camcorders at that point.
Yeah, right.
They're like, you're going to make a video game?
Yeah. So again, very bold. I think it's very bold for them to do that.
The irony, though, is that in the next few generations, they would keep getting undercut by Nintendo and Xbox.
Yeah, well, because they caught on, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? They were like, okay, well, this is how Sony's doing. Because I think that's always the thing, is when you're looking at who's in number one, you're going to take what they did to get to number one and try to copy that or iterate on it, or, you know, make or do something better than what they're doing, because they didn't get to number one just by chance, right? By luck. They had to do, they were tactful in what they did. So it makes sense that they probably influenced others to say like, well, here's how we did it ourselves. And granted, it's not as simple as saying, you know, $299.
Yeah.
But they did have other practices that got them to the top of the crop, more or less.
It's weird that, like, in these days, somebody will come out and announce $750, and then people lose their minds if they're like $550.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really sort of E3 in a nutshell. Some other notable developers intended this. There was Capcom. They had just shown Resident Evil, which again, like I knew nothing of Resident Evil at this time.
No.
Yeah, it
definitely
was
not.
totally in my blind spot. Street Fighter, the movie, the game had been shown, so that appealed to me at some point.
I never, all this time, until your story of how you got a PlayStation, I never realized that was a launch game.
I
Yeah.
didn't know it was because again, like when I got my PS1, it was after launch, so I knew it was an early game. But yeah, it was a launch game. They showed Mega Man X3. Acclaim had Batman Forever, Judge Dredd, Justice League Task Force, which is a really fun fighting game. Turok. Squaresoft, because they weren't Square then, they were still Squaresoft. They'd shown off Chrono Trigger and Secret Evermore, which are two very big RPGs for the time.
For the Nintendo.
For the Nintendo, for their Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And then just as a note, the final E3 was a digital-only event in 2021, so it just kind of withered away, and it's sort of what it was, because E3 was like the thing to hear back then. It was the event to follow.
They stopped, or not stopped, but they lessened it. And then they were trying to make a comeback until 2020 hit. The pandemic
is really what killed everything else. Yeah, because they were trying to.
And then a whole bunch of other people sprang up, and like Nintendo was like, "Well, we'll just do our own because we have the capacity to do this live streaming." You know, Sony was like, "We'll do our own." Microsoft, "We'll do our own," and then that's what killed it.
That's what exactly. It sucks because I used to look for E3 all the time, like especially in the early days of the internet, where it's like you're waiting for videos to pop up, you have to wait forever to download, or you're reading previews just to see the next screenshot of anything possible, right? Like I remember just going to multiple sites trying to refresh and seeing what would pop up, what new thing, because it was pre-Twitter, pre-social media. It was really just whatever gaming outlet could get to their website to update it first. You were there to refresh and check it out, kind of thing. So it was a really exciting time for me back then growing up, because gaming news was a lot harder to come by than it is now. And I just always remember like trying to find every news bit I could, every gaming website, everything, you know?
But back then with dial-up, we were just reading articles.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Going to take forever to load a trailer.
Yeah. It's like, I'll set this, go have lunch.
Yeah.
We'll go watch this for the next 2 minutes at some point. Yeah. Now we'll move into Q3, and it's some of the bigger releases. This is between like July and September of 95. Chrono Trigger, that came out around this time. That was a huge, monumental RPG, still is. There's rumors of a remake coming. It's
oh wow.
Yeah, it's rumored. It's been rumored. There's just like a lot of rumors that go around. I didn't play this when I was young. I remember seeing ads for it back then. RPGs really weren't my genre of choice back then, because I didn't know many friends who really had them. Like we had one friend who was getting them all the time, but I wasn't hanging out with him enough to get an understanding for RPGs very well.
Somebody, I can't remember if it was somebody on my street or somebody at school, but they had it and I borrowed it once, and for some reason, to me, it was even more confusing than a Final Fantasy.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
But then when I played it years later, I actually own it on DS, and I was like, man, this is an amazing game.
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
I did finally finish it on the DS. I got one of the endings because I know there's a bunch. But yeah, that's the first time I did finish it on that DS port, which is really fantastic. I know it's expensive as hell now.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Luckily, I got it back then.
Yeah, exactly. I think it goes for like $80 to $100 complete. I think somewhere around there, maybe more now. But it's an excellent port. There's also the PS1 port, which is problematic, but it's a way to play it. And also, I know it's like on, I know it's on Steam, which I think is a port of the mobile version that's on iOS and Android.
Oh,
so there's no official like Switch version yet, or PS5 or anything, unfortunately. I don't know if that'll ever happen. Nonetheless, it's a significant RPG for good reason. Mega Man 7 came out in 95. This is interesting because Mega Man X, we've talked about that a billion times. That was our first episode way back. Yeah. And that's that game felt more fresher despite coming out a year earlier than Mega Man 7 did. I didn't appreciate Mega Man 7 until much later, because when I rented it, I was just like, oh, this is fine, but Mega Man X is better.
Yeah.
I had a hard time really grasping this one until I got older.
And I think I would have appreciated it because I played all of the Mega Mans on Nintendo, and I'm like, oh, this is more of that. But
yeah,
I didn't even play it back then until it came out on some of the collections. And I was like,
probably the first collection on GameCube and PS2, I would imagine.
Yeah, maybe. And I was like, oh, okay, this is Mega Man.
Yeah. Killer Instinct debuted on the Super Nintendo. This was a big game for me. It's a condensed port of the arcade game. As far as I was concerned back then, this looked like the arcade. I didn't realize there was a big disparity until I actually played the arcade version way later in life. But to me, this looked like the screenshots I'd seen in the arcade version. So it was a game I put a lot of time into with my brother and my buddy Alex. Tekken 2 debuted in the arcades. Kind of shocking to me that Tekken 2 was out in 95, because Tekken 1 would debut on the PS1, I think later in the year, and then finally Tekken 2 would get ported to the PS1 in August 1996. There's Castlevania Dracula X on the Super Nintendo. This is a port of Rondo of Blood. It's a different kind of port.
It's not a good one, isn't it?
It's it's hard because I don't want to knock it too much because it's a lesser Castlevania game, but it's a good Castlevania game. It's just hard to compare to like Bloodlines or even 4 because this is just sort of like a compromised version of Rondo of Blood, which is only available on the PC Engine Duo, which is the TurboGrafx CD, only in Japan. They had like animated cutscenes, they had incredible CD-based music, right? It's hard to take that game and condense it to a Super Nintendo version and make it drastically different.
And like you said, Super Castlevania 4 had already come out, and that was amazing.
Yeah, and that was 4 years earlier.
Yeah.
That was a 91 game. So I think Dracula X, I think it's a little bit overrated in some regards. I think it's a totally fine Castlevania game. I'd say the worst thing about it is that it is like, $800 to own right now. It's one of the rare Super Nintendo games. Doom came out on Super Nintendo. This was a big thing. I rented this back then. Again, as far as I'm concerned, it looked like the PC version I could never play. So it was fine.
Yeah, I don't think I had played the PC version yet, and I had a buddy on my street that owned it, and I would borrow it from him, and I'm like, yeah, this is Doom.
Yeah, it felt fine. The music was fine. It was slow, but, again, it's Doom. We didn't have a PC to run it. I literally didn't own a PC till like 96, I think it was.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd seen Doom, but I couldn't play Doom. Comix Zone on the Genesis, this was a huge game for me. It looks amazing. It's a fantastically unique idea for the time. Like you're literally traversing through comic panels across them. You're drawn in from the evil villain. Like he's drawing the world around you, so to speak. The worst thing about this game is the difficulty. You have one life, and it is brutally hard.
Yep.
But I would love a remake of this game at some point, or like someone to do like a fan mod where there's like checkpoints, or I don't know, something to make it a little bit more digestible. Save states will probably be sufficient. Actually. Yeah. I know it's on a bunch of collections, so maybe save states is a way to go in lieu of that.
Yeah.
Rayman, this launched on the PS1 and Jaguar. This is the first iteration of the Rayman series. It was a gorgeous 2D platformer. And Donkey Kong Land on the Game Boy, which is sort of a condensed version of Donkey Kong Country that is way better than you would ever expect on the Game Boy.
It's actually like Land 2 and Land 3 are more ports of the Super Nintendo ones. This one was kind of unique in that it only had 4 worlds. It was very different from the
it's almost I would kind of say it's like a parallel to like the Mega Man games, right? Where it's very much like the original experience. It's a different kind of flavor of things, but they did a great job of condensing it to a Game Boy. Like they didn't try to literally port the Super Nintendo one and try to smash it in here or something. It actually is a perfectly great game on its own rights.
Yep.
And in the middle of all this happening, we have 2 big launches. One, more successful than the other. So we'll get to the first one here that wasn't so successful. This is the Virtual Boy, released August 14th, 1995. This was Nintendo's biggest failure by far. Next to this probably would be the Wii U, which is a weird thing to say, just in terms of sales.
I think that still did better than the Virtual Boy.
It did.
Yeah.
Wii U sold, I think, around 10 to 13 million units, I think, total, which is crazy to think. Some people would say like GameCube and N64 were failures because they weren't like, Wii level or Super Nintendo level. I'm not so sure about that because you can make a case for how great they are.
People also compare those to their generations, and they weren't PlayStation or PlayStation 2 levels.
Very fair too, yeah.
But they were, GameCube was amazing.
It
graphically.
was, yeah. But Virtual Boy was definitely a failure. From what I found, it seems it only sold 777,000 units, so it didn't even break 1 million sales. I remember a lot of hype being drummed up for this beforehand, even though I wasn't totally interested in it. It was just like the big thing Nintendo was focused on before the Nintendo 64. So it was codenamed VR32, which I do remember that. That was just something that sticks in your head. Like, you hear Project Dolphin.
Yeah.
You hear Katana, which I think was the Dreamcast codename. Like that was the thing back then, is codenames for these underdeveloped systems. In total, I guess they shipped around 350,000 in the US by December 95. So in 4 months, it sold just under, not even 500,000.
I love I don't know how they came up with this projected sales, but they're like, by the end, 2.5 million.
2.5 by the end of 95. And my thing, it's like, I was a kid. I had no interest in this thing. It was bulky. It was just really obtuse, just in terms of like even the controller, just how you play it. Like they say it was portable, but there's nothing portable about the Virtual Boy.
They don't even have, it's like you said, clunky. There's no head strap to potentially make it portable where you could like sit in your car on a car trip and have it like strapped to your head. You needed that weird kickstand.
The kickstand, because I also think that the actual headset would be too heavy with the strap.
Yeah, you'd be like leaning forward.
Yeah, everyone would have neck problems at this point, like on top of eye problems, right? So this, I think Nintendo, and so forth, because this was like one of Gunpei Yokoi's last projects, because he was a big head with the Game Boy, Metroid. He was a major influence on Nintendo in the 80s and early 90s. So he unfortunately passed away of I think during like a car accident or something. Like he was on the side of the road
shortly after this launch.
Shortly after this launch. So it sucks because sometimes people associate this with him, which is not really fair, because I think people get hung up on failures when it's like, a lot of us, everyone fails. It's just a matter of like how you come out of it. And unfortunately for this, like
he couldn't come out of it.
Yeah. And one of these things with the Virtual Boy is like they tried, like they had this idea. I remember seeing or reading previews pretty recently about how they wanted to go for like a full color headset, but they quickly realized it would be insanely expensive. There's no way it could happen. So they went with this red and black screen, which they actually encourage you to take breaks in between games. I remember seeing that, where if you play for some amount of times, hey, don't forget to take a break.
Doesn't a thing pop up on the screen and like
it's a full on just stops the game pop up? Yeah, because I got through that a few times, and me being a stupid kid when I got this on clearance, just said whatever.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying Warrior Lands, right?
I know my body.
Yeah, so I think they put so many eggs in this basket, hoping it would be like the next Game Boy. That's really what they were hoping for. Is this would be the next thing to take off, because it was 3D. Virtual reality was a thing in the early 90s. Like I remember things like Lawnmower Man kind of like causing like a future of VR. And even now, 30 years later, like VR has its footprint, but it does not have the ubiquity that everyone thought it would.
This was when Star Trek The Next Generation was at its height, and they had the holodeck where everybody thought we would have entire rooms of virtual reality.
Yeah. So this didn't do well. It just didn't sell well. No one was interested. I think it launched at like $200 or $250, and in total, there's only 22 officially released games for this, 14 in the US, and the rest were in Japan. This was also released in Japan in July '95, but it was actually discontinued by December '95 in Japan.
Oh Jesus!
It released August '95 in the US, and it was discontinued just a year later in August 1996. The final game was 3D Tetris, which came out in March '96.
This was, though, like Sega, kind of just ahead of its time, because you would go on to have the Nintendo 3DS, which had much better 3D capabilities. Also, the controller was unique, where it had like the two D-pads.
It actually worked well.
Yeah.
For Teleboxer, it was great for that. It made perfect use of the controller.
Didn't it have 4 shoulder buttons?
No, it had 2 back buttons.
Okay.
It had A, B, and the 2 D-pads, which on Teleboxer kind of controlled your left and right fists.
Which kind of leads now to the 2 control sticks that we
have. Right? Yeah. So I think, in my eyes, I feel like that Nintendo had been seeing what Sega was doing, was sort of, going to new technology, like with CD-based systems and whatever else. Nintendo's like, well, no one's really doing VR. Well, how about we try that? And unfortunately,
and 3D.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this was just as big of a miss as the 32X was, And I wouldn't say the Saturn, because the Saturn still sold a little bit better, but this was by far, this might have been why Nintendo is so, in the past I've talked about how they're sort of like, when they develop a new system, they're thinking like more laterally versus like forward thinking, right?
Yeah.
Like not a generational leap. It's just, we'll take existing technology and make something unique out of it. And I almost feel like that the Virtual Boy was their sort of lesson, like, okay, we're not doing this again because it costs us so much and it's too big a risk. So from now on, like, we'll kind of make these sort of iterative updates or iterative systems that are an advancement, but not like a generational leap.
So if you think about the title too, it says Virtual Boy. And so you would say, oh, this is a portable system, the next in line from the Game Boy. And then they took too big of a leap, and so they did the Game Boy Color, which was very, very slight increase or improvement over the original Game Boy, and that bought them the time to do the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden they were like, okay, if we do these small advancements, not this giant wild leap, they like dominated the handheld system after that.
Absolutely, yeah, because the PSP was, I love the PSP. Like I got it when it came out. Like my sister got it for my birthday or something like that, or for Christmas. I don't remember what it was. I love that system, and it was a literal generational leap over anything Nintendo had done before, right?
Yeah.
You literally had, it was almost like a lower end PS2 and portable, like impossible to think about, but it was what it was, right? And the DS just came by with its unique games, its better price points. And it's one of the best selling systems ever to this day. And the PSP, despite its significance for what it does tech-wise, it's almost like a footnote in Sony's history at this point. Like they barely even acknowledge it. Same with the Vita, right? So, yeah, Nintendo kind of shifted their thinking, I think, at least from my perspective, after the Virtual Boy, saying we can't do that again.
Yeah.
This is not happening. We're just gonna stick with what we know, what works.
Yeah, nothing wild. Let's play it safe.
Yeah, and the Wii is a great example as well. Like again, we're transitioning to an HD era, and the Wii locked to its 480p fidelity, whereas PS3 and 360 are like, hey, like 720p, 1080i, 1080p, and despite how blurry the games were and everything, they looked considerably better than anything the Wii did, and the Wii outsold both.
Yeah.
I think it might have had combined sales of both, as far as I know.
Yeah, I think it was like, it was beating them so handedly, and the other systems tried to do motion controls after that. They were playing catch up when it came to that.
Like the Kinect and the Move and all that.
And Nintendo was like, no, we just do this and do it better.
Yeah. So the Virtual Boy, to me, it's I owned one for a little bit. Unfortunately, it broke, and I just ended up trading it away, which was still worth a lot of money. Like I traded it for like $150. And it was broken. And unfortunately, because I lost the games I had like 5 games I got from EB Games. It was at the time when I got this, I was like 11 or 12 years old, and it was $35 for a brand new system. Each game was $10 brand new, and I got like the AC adapter for $10 or something like that. So I got like a quarter of the game library and an entirely new system for like $80 where it was back then. But it's just, play it on an emulator, because I think one of the games I'll talk about in a little bit, like Warland, it is a really great game.
Yeah.
I wish that would get somehow ported. Actually, it is coming to Switch at some point online. And that's also ironic. I guess I didn't even think about that, but Nintendo, despite forgetting the Virtual Boy for almost 3 decades, they announced at one of their directs recently that they're coming out with a peripheral that I pre-ordered the moment it came up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because it's a novelty. Like, like I have to have this stupid thing. But they're kind of recapturing that same experience where it's like you put this headset on your Switch, and they're coming out with some of the Virtual Boy games. And I forgot what the lineup was, but I was excited the moment they announced it. It's like, wow, that's kind of cool.
It should basically be their entire library, because
it really is. There's not much on there.
Yeah, that's going to be done like that.
yeah. So I know I'm not gonna play it a ton, because I know it's not gonna be good for your eyes or anything. But
it still has the kickstand and everything. You still have to kind of like lean into it.
I don't know how it works. That's what I'm curious. Is like, am I supposed to hold my face? Like, what am I supposed to do? Or like, maybe you hold the joy. I don't know. I'll be curious when I find out when it comes out in February.
Does it come with a Virtual Boy controller?
No, it's literally just the headsets.
Oh, okay.
And they have a cardboard version of it, which I was like, I'm not gonna
Labo?
buy that. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So I was like, I'll pay for the actual thing, because I want it. Like, I think, I love some of the failures in gaming, like the 32X, the Saturn, whatever, because I just think that there's sort of like almost like a comfort thing for them. Like, I don't think they're failures for a reason, but I think there's always something cool about them. I think it's great when they kind of get acknowledged in some way, and that's what Nintendo's doing, which I would have never expected them to acknowledge a Virtual Boy ever again.
I think enough time has passed. I think 30 years always seems to be like when retro things become good again.
They're like, there's fondness for this in some regard.
Yeah.
It's funny to me, because I always think about how we're always having like a wish list for what Nintendo would do, like bring back the Virtual Console, like bring back like Donkey Kong 64 on the Switch app. We've been dying for that. And they do this thing that's totally outside of the box, where it's like they're bringing their Virtual Boy. This is where they're investing development time in,
They're like, we hear your chants for DK64.
Yeah, here's the
Virtual Boy.
I'm like, all right. I'm like the only one saying like, all right.
Yeah.
I'll wait for DK64. Yeah. The other big launch that we'll talk about, it's a totally different story, is the PlayStation launch. And this was September 9th, 1995. This would ultimately sell 102 million units worldwide, which is really, really crazy. Because again, I don't know how many people had a lot of confidence in Sony with their first, console, really. But it paid off, because they had a lot of great games. They had a great library. They had a lot of developers. They were very forward thinking, and it paid off. There was about 40.7 million that were sold in the US, 21 or so million in the Asian continents. So it was just a massively successful system. Successful system.
It's surprising to hear in the following years that like Saturn was actually outperforming it in Asia.
Yeah. So in Japan, the Saturn was a polar opposite story of here. I don't know exactly why. I know they had a much more diverse game library, and there's a lot more support there. So maybe that's really was the differentiator, was that, again, when you launch the Saturn with less games than you're sort of planning for to try to get ahead of the competition, it's $100 more. You're really just shooting yourself in the foot at least twice, because you already have a more expensive system, and you don't have a system that is as powerful as a PlayStation either, because that's the other thing, is that the Saturn was it was a really great 2D system and like an okay 3D system. So some of those 3D games didn't hold up as well, right? So I think that's the hard part, is that in the US, the Saturn was flailing, and then it was doing well in Japan until the PlayStation came out, and that's when they started getting ground in like 95, 96. So some of the launch titles, we talked about this in our launch games episode because I had a couple that were on there. But there's Battle Arena Toshinden, Rayman, Ridge Racer, NBA Jam TE, and Street Fighter the movie, the game, which was I mentioned before. That's like the game I wanted, and that sold me on it. So again, not like the strongest lineup necessarily, but it was a lineup that was successful enough for them to get away from to get a long big start on the Saturn. What else are we at? So I guess move into Q4 now, Deucy.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into there. This is when there's like
it's the holiday time.
A lot of stuff. There's holiday time.
Yeah.
So we'll be kind of wrapping up some of the games we're calling out here, and then we'll get into some of the stuff like the top selling games and like kind of what was prevalent on magazine covers, because that's a whole sort of separate sidebar that's a little bit fun to talk about there. That was based on my memory, and I was like, let's see what it actually is, because I'll tally this up. So some of the Q4 releases, these released between like October, December. Street Fighter Alpha was out in the arcades. Home ports wouldn't come till like February 96.
Huh.
Alpha it's really interesting because
I didn't realize Alpha was that old, especially arcade version. I thought was still later 90s.
I thought it was 96 as well, because I wasn't following Street Fighter Alpha. I literally saw that at a Toys R Us, and I was like, oh, a new Street Fighter that I hadn't heard of for my PS1. Like, I'll buy it. And luckily it was around like birthday time, so I was able to convince my parents I want this for my birthday or whatever.
Yeah.
But Street Fighter Alpha is interesting because up until this point, there was Street Fighter 2 Fatigue, because there was at least 4 versions out. Mm-hmm. The most recent one was Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which was it was only in arcades, and it had some home ports, I think, on the 3DO, and I forgot what else. So, as the 4th iteration of the same game with just new characters, some balance changes. Alpha was the step forward, but it was interesting because it was a prequel to Street Fighter 2. So the characters look a little bit younger. There's also a different roster, like Charlie's in here in lieu of Guile. He's Nash in Japan. He's like the parallel to Guile.
Didn't they have a couple people from Street Fighter 1?
Yeah, Adon's in here.
Yeah.
Sagat is one of the main bosses as well, like he was in Street Fighter 1. And Bison's in here, except he's like hulking and just thick. It's really weird.
Isn't there a guy that kind of looks like a samurai or something?
That's Sodom. He was from Final Fight.
Oh, that's
really
right.
Interesting. Yeah, he was a really interesting character. He's kind of like the grappler in here, because Zangief wasn't in Alpha 1. So this, I think the most familiar characters there was Bison, Sagat, Ken, Ryu, Chun-Li, and Akuma was hidden. I don't remember if there was anyone else that was sort of familiar before. So there's a new cast of characters like Birdie, who was also in Street Fighter 1.
Oh, that's right.
This was a weird sort of amalgamation of like, here's old and new, and especially old that you might not be familiar with. This had a really gorgeous aesthetic. It was almost like anime-like. This was really, to me, it was like the first step in like the Extra and Children of the Atom kind of style, where they had like these really huge sprites that are really vivid, really well animated. And this was the first iteration of Street Fighter Alpha where I really loved this series, because it was definitely a different Street Fighter than we've been used to. And it was definitely a generational leap from Street Fighter 2.
Yeah.
Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. This was a big one for you and I, Deucy. I never bought this, but I borrowed it from you a lot. I played at your house a lot. It was a huge game.
This was so fun. I'm pretty sure I got this that same Christmas as Donkey Kong Country 2, and because I just couldn't pick one or the other, and I had to keep splitting my time back and forth, because they're both relatively long games for someone our age back then.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
And Yoshi's Island had so many like extras that you could collect and unlock and everything. I remember even getting this little like handheld pocket guide to tell me where all the red coins and stuff were.
That's pretty funny.
It wasn't a big.
Oh God, I vaguely remember that actually.
Yeah, it wasn't a big strategy guide with pictures. It was just
like a pocketbook.
Yeah, it looked like a novel.
I used to buy those all the time for like fighting games, because it was just like a move list.
Yeah.
I remember those. Yeah, I forgot you had that. Jeez, that's such a flashback. Secret of Evermore. That was a really cool RPG on the Super Nintendo. Vector Man, WrestleMania the arcade game, a huge game for me on the PS1. Hexen Beyond Heretic, that was released on DOS. That was sort of the Doom engine, but more fantasy based, more magic based. That was a really cool game. Twisted Metal on the PS1, that released. That's a great one. We mentioned Doom on the Super Nintendo, but also came out on the PS1. It's a really interesting ports. Tekken released on the PS1. That was another big game. Killer Instinct came out on the Game Boy. You remember, like, I'm sure you remember the ads that were everywhere in Nintendo Power and everywhere else saying Killer Instinct now on the Game Boy. Like, it's a condensed version that actually looks pretty good.
I vaguely remember that. I just remember Killer Instinct ads, and then I think they would line up the boxes like it's on these systems.
Yeah. I noted Sonic Drift 2, which most people may not care about, but you and I do, because you owned it. And I was like, this is a really cool little kart racer.
This is fun. I don't even know how I found it or where I got it, but I picked it up and I was like, yeah, this is perfect for the Game Gear.
Really sweet game. I really enjoyed that. My brother and I used to love borrowing that from you. Virtua Fighter 2 came out. It's crazy to think how old Virtua Fighter is, because the first one came out, I want to say 94, maybe 93 in the arcades. And that was the first fully 3D fighter that was actually very competent. It was really, really good. That's the thing is, I don't know how many 3D fighters had come out before this, but this is usually regarded as like the number one or sort of the original. But this was like one of the most fluid 3D fighting games. It looked great because it kind of had like this flat shaded look, so it wasn't sort of detailed with textures necessarily. So the character models were relatively simple, but they still had a lot of definition because of how well the art style was, or how good the art style was. Donkey Kong Country 2, Day's Conquest, another huge game for us, Deucy. We played the shit out of this one back then.
Yeah.
And then we also have Final Fight 3. I'll be honest, I was out of the Final Fight game at this point because I was definitely a Streets of Rage person by far.
Oh, dang. I didn't realize there was a third one.
You never knew that?
No.
Oh my God.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't even remember what the box art looks like.
So I played it at least once back then. And my thing with Final Fight is that Final Fight 1 is good, but it's not good on Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Final Fight 2 and 3 are just fine beat 'em ups. I don't think they reached the heights of the first game for some reason. I don't know what the issue was, but I just never felt like they were good as Streets of Rage, especially Streets of Rage 2. But Final Fight 3 had come out in 95, and to me, it just, I think a friend had it or something, but it was one of those games that I almost never saw in stores either.
Yeah.
Like I think I rented Final Fight 2, and I can't remember if I ever saw 3 in a store before. And then a couple other releases, Earthworm Jim 2 on the Super Nintendo and Genesis. I really enjoyed that game. And then one last one, just because I loved it so much back then, Wario Land. This came out in November of 95.
Oh, don't forget Mega Man X3.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, Mega Man X3. Yeah, sorry about that one. Yeah, Mega Man X3, which, again, I rented that one. That came out in December 95 in Japan, and we got in January 96. So technically, we're January 96 when this episode releases. So
yeah,
I'm going to allow that one.
Yeah, 30 years from
30 years from that, yeah. Mega Man X3 was really interesting because it was the first game where we could finally play at 0, but it was kind of limited. Like, you had to go in the pause menu, you hit R, I think it was, and it would switch to him. And you can only use them on like a limited basis. I think it's like until you could like once per level. You couldn't switch back or something. I forgot what the consideration was.
You could switch back because if he died, you lost him for the rest of the game. And you also couldn't use him in boss fights.
That's right. That was the big thing I hated. Yeah. Because I remember renting and I was like, hey, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to play 0. I totally forgot about that part. That was the big deal. Yeah. I don't know. I was at the game store recently, and like a person we always talk to, the cashier, he's always talking about how, like, or he's asking like, what Mega Man game should I play? Because I was running Mega Man, I was like, just play X. Like, that's the one you should play. He's like, what about X2 and 3? I was like, well, those are good, but for some reason, like, I just can't get into them like I could with X. I don't know what it was. There's something a little bit missing about them. Beyond the fact that they're a little bit harder to find back then as well.
I mean, yeah, they're hard to find now because they're so expensive.
Yeah.
But I'd say they're a little more overly complicated than they needed to be.
That's also fair.
Like, X1 and even X4 are very simple. Go get your armor pieces, fight the bosses, and finish it. Whereas like X2 and X3 involved like get Zero's parts, but you can only do it at certain times. And then if you miss it, you're shit out of luck and stuff like that. And then I forgot what the thing with 3 was, but there was another weird like time limit thing.
Wasn't there some randomized thing where like you might have like a mini boss fight in one of the levels? I forgot what it was.
That was in 2 to get 2? Zero's parts.
Okay.
And you know, Mega Man is all about you fight one boss, you get his power, and then you want to go to the next one that's weak against that. But to fight these other mini bosses, you might have to go completely off your planned route. And now you're stuck maybe fighting a boss that you have no power for. And you just better hope that you like beat them in the mid-level, got Zero's part, and then you don't care if you died because you have the part now.
Yeah. So I think it's just one of the things where it was a little bit hard to access. And then once I got older, I still enjoy them, but I just don't think they're as good as Mega Man X1. I think there's a lot of people might say like X2 is the best, X3, which, you know, perfectly valid. But from my perspective, it's just, it does not get better than Mega Man X.
For me, I always looked forward to, and this was the same with Mega Man, I always looked forward to what new bosses there would be. And in the X series, they were all based on animals. And then I also looked forward in the X series to what his armor was going to look like. Because it always got like sharper and like slicker looking.
Yeah, and more sort of what's the one I'm looking for? A little bit more
Anime-ish.
Or like exotic and like a little bit like grandiose. You know, like
Yeah.
it's really trying to make it look like he's this walking death machine mech kind of thing. You know.
Yeah.
So X2 and X3, I do love them, but I just don't love them as much as X. Like X1 is just it's top of the crop for me.
Thank God for collections now, because
Yeah, exactly.
you're not going to be buying these.
Yeah, I saw a local store actually just posted they got a consignment of Mega Man X2. It's a gorgeous boxed copy, which I never see because we always laugh how we always see a cart of X3.
Yeah.
And it's always shredded for some reason.
Yeah.
So this boxed copy, I'm assuming it's complete. $1,000.
Oh my goodness.
It's really insane.
Oof.
So stick to collections because, you know, I wouldn't pay $1,000 for Mega Man X1.
Yeah.
I would never pay that for X3 unless I was, you know, filthy rich, which we are not, unfortunately. One last launch I'll mention, which isn't necessarily a game, but Game Facts.
Oh.
One of my favorite sites ever growing up because that's where all the fan-made guides, it was like the ultimate community when I was younger of like finding like-minded gamers and whatnot, or like if you wanted to help, you could post on the message boards. That launched November 5th, 1995, so that recently celebrates 30th anniversary.
Damn.
It's a different place now because GameSpot owns it, and it's, you know, it's corporate. But all the guides, everything is on there. Like some of my old reviews, sometimes I go check out, I was like, holy shit, like I wrote this when I was like 14. And there's a review of Rush 2049, and I think that Jeremy McGrath's Supercross or MX 2002, I think I wrote a review for that.
Wow.
So all that stuff is still there, like all the old guides where people would do these really great ASCII art things, like for the logo of the game.
Yeah, it was surprising how in-depth a lot of people got. You didn't even have to go out and buy one of the strategy guides at the store because people were very in-depth on what you wanted to do.
It was great because, you know, I'm a little bit cynical of like social media now because everyone's just trying to get like their biggest bite out of everything.
Yeah.
But sites back then, like Game Facts or anything, that was like the enthusiast place where it's like they're all trying to make the best, most in-depth guide, most comprehensive guide. It's all fan made. No one made really any money off of it because it was just a community thing, you know.
The equivalent now is when you go on YouTube and there's like a playthrough that's telling you where to go and how to do things, and it's even better if it's like silent.
Yes. Yes.
If it's just the playthrough, no narration.
I still go back to Game Facts guys because sometimes like I just don't want to sit through a video. I don't want to fast forward. My old man comes up. I'm like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, just give me something I can read very quickly. And because the other thing too is like they would put like footnotes or like sort of searchable terms in there. So it's like you'd say like section F41 or something.
Yeah.
And you scroll through there, so I know exactly where to look. Right.
I'm opposite of that. Where like in my old age, I could read something and I'm like, I know I'm still going to get lost. I'm going to reverse this somehow.
That's also fair.
I'm going to turn too early. So I am very thankful for the visuals on YouTube.
The only reason I will say, like, I still use some videos too, but my thing is like sometimes it's hard to find the right video with what I'm looking for.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's our part. So like, I don't want to be tapping through like 10 videos, but like, this is where I'm at.
And constantly scrubbing to find it.
Yeah. Whereas with the Game Facts side, like, I kind of have to scroll too, right? But at least I have a table of contents to kind of guide me where I'm supposed to go, kind of thing. But it's still a valuable resource in my eyes. It's just incredible. It's been out for 30 years, and it was such a big part of me growing up and finding, like I said, other gamers that I didn't know. Because for us, like, you know, we had our friends and everything, but it wasn't like we knew a ton of people who were gamers. So it's like it was really just an online presence for me that I got used to, or learned more about games and got into it more than I ever did before.
And I can't remember. I must have not even used it until about 97 or 98. And it had already been out since 95.
Yeah, I didn't realize because like I said, I got my PC in 96, 97, or somewhere 96. And I don't know how I came across it, but I was using it even then because once I learned about it, it's like, oh, like every game I can imagine is on here in some way. Like it was basically a database of games that I'd never heard of or knew, and basically everything I wanted was on there. They had cheats, guides, boards for each game. It was truly incredible.
There's probably only less than a handful of times, like once or twice, where there was nothing on the game I was playing on Game Facts. I'm like, wow, I'm this obscure.
You would find that sometimes. Where it's just like, there's not many people making guides for anything like that, or it's just not a popular game. Like that was sort of the compromise there. It's like now with gaming being so popular and YouTube being so popular and just videos in general, just social media public, you do get that where you're probably going to find what you're looking for, even if it's something from like 1989. Some guy will have some insane in-depth guide about stuff you didn't even know. So it's not all bad. That's just, like I said, there's always good and bad. It's just my thing is I love Game Facts is really what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So that's really like the big releases for the year. So I think now it'll be fun if we get into like some things like the cover stories on magazines. Like we won't go through every single one here, but it's really just sort of a snapshot of what 1995 was and what games were a huge deal at the time. And that's all aside from all the launch things we just talked about, because again, like the Saturn launching, PlayStation, and Virtual Boy, good or bad, that's still significant, because in addition to that, there was already a ton of systems out in 95 that were kind of on their way out. Like there was the Jaguar, 3DO was out. We talked a little bit about the Nintendo, how that was pretty much on its way out at this point. Like really no games have been coming out. But separate to that, like games were still, the topic at hand here. So what I did was I remember throughout my early times in magazines, like I would always see fighting game covers all the time, especially around this time. So I kind of went through the big magazines, EGM, GamePro, and Nintendo Pro. Those are really the three big ones for me, at least. And I took what each month, or what was on the cover for each month. And it's funny because, as you saw, Deucy, and you were laughing yourself, EGM featured Mortal Kombat 3, what was it, 7 out of the 12 months out of the year.
Yes.
And I chronicled that in some way where either it was the only cover story on there, or in some way it was mentioned. Like there's one in March where it was like a fighting game thing. It was Tekken, Virtua Fighter, Toshinden, and Mortal Kombat 3 were all on the cover. GamePro, a little bit less. They had, what was it, 1, 2, 3? 3 times Mortal Kombat 3 was on the cover. And Nintendo Power, being Nintendo Power, because it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
They only featured it once in November. To say Mortal Kombat 3 was the biggest game of the year is not an understatement. It really was. It's I don't know what other game people were hyped for, because Mortal Kombat 2 was such a success and people just wanted more Mortal Kombat. And I remember reading so much news on Mortal Kombat 3. And my suspicion with EGM is that beyond the fact that, these covers probably sold the magazines, I almost want to assume that, Midway probably offered some coverage for them. Like, here's some exclusive news that you can put in your magazines if you give us cover stories.
And were these covers all because different ports were launching at different times?
No. So the ports weren't even coming out till October-ish, I want to say.
That's ridiculous.
So this was basically leading up to the release in arcades, during the arcades, and also Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 was already being talked about, because they already planned when Mortal Kombat 3 came out to release Ultimate. Like that was, some people think that was like something they added on after the fact, but if you watch that documentary on the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, they said no, like our plan was to release Mortal Kombat 3 and sort of like an upgrade, because again, Street Fighter made it popular where you release a new version in a few months or a year with more characters.
I've always felt like, so I didn't realize that it was that huge. Because I wasn't big into the fighting games. I liked Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat 2. I like Street Fighter, but I wasn't always looking forward to them.
Yeah.
And so I didn't mind. I only had Nintendo Power, and I liked each issue had a different cover. I was like, oh, what's going to be the cover this time? And then when I finally played Mortal Kombat 3, I think I played Ultimate first, because years later when I played 3 in, I don't know, some sort of collection or something, I was like, this is crap because of the character selection. Like, what did they do, and why was this so hyped? That's why they had to make Ultimate as an apology.
Yeah, it's really it's really interesting to me, because I was hyped for MK3, and one thing that I did notice was how different the art style was, because the digitized graphics were great. Like they just look better and better from 1 to 2 to 3, right?
Yeah.
But they went for more like an urban thing, like an urban theme, where it's like everything's like in a like a bank, a city. It wasn't so
because you're on
Earth basically,
now.
like Shao Kahn's invaded Earth, and I think it looks great for what it is, but it's also just such a different tone change from Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah.
And while it was obviously successful, it's weird to look back at Mortal Kombat 3 and be like, yeah, that was such a wildly different. It's almost like the black sheep of Mortal Kombat in some senses, because it was so different, yet it was so familiar at the same time.
I was so confused when I finally played the original version, and I think I texted you or something. I was like, wait, where's so-and-so? Where's so-and-so? And you were like, no, that's how Mortal Kombat 3 released. I'm like, oh, I was definitely used to Ultimate.
Yeah. Ed Boon and John Tobias, right, which one mentioned it in that documentary too. They said that they originally took out Scorpion because they didn't realize how popular he was. So they thought that Sub-Zero was, the most popular character, and they also wanted to unmask them.
So, Scorpion's the only one you hear in arcades.
Yeah. So clearly they sort of miscalculated that in some sense, because they knew they were going to put him in later. But I think that's also what was to his detriment. It's kind of like Street Fighter 3 in a way, where that was less successful because it had like 2 to 3 of the characters you're familiar with, all new roster, all new art style, just drastically different what you know. Yet again, it's very different yet familiar in some way.
That's why they had like a couple extra Street Fighter 3s, right? They were putting people back in,
and they refined the mechanics more. And by third strike, it was a really just amazing game.
Yeah.
But it took 3 iterations to get to that.
Took a couple swings.
Yeah, and you had then they brought in like Chun-Li and some more familiar characters, and they still expanded the roster. But I think MK3 and Street Fighter 3 share more similarities than I at least I would have thought before this, frankly. But I think there's more similarities there in terms of like what they did for the series and like how it was received before it went on to, you know, sort of reboot itself and sort of get back to what made them successful. So it's really interesting, those third entries, which maybe they came out of fatigue, right? Because that's the thing. It's like you want to try something different because people are tired of the old stuff. And sometimes you go a little bit too far outside the box or your comfort zone and people aren't so receptive to it. But in MK3's case, it's still sold extremely well.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a weird game to look back in hindsight, but it was still one of the most hyped games in 95. And also, I would say one of the big things or big differences is that Nintendo Power, you know, it was really just Nintendo stuff. It wasn't arcades. I think that's also the differences with GamePro and EGM. They were more focused on multiple consoles, arcade, like what's hot at the arcades,
video
and what's
games
coming,
in general.
just in general.
Yeah.
So I think their demographic was much different, which is why they featured MK3 so much, especially in EGM, because I'm sure that sold a bunch of magazines. Like if you put that on the cover, you know, you're walking by the magazine stand, like you're going to look at what takes your eye first, and it's probably Mortal Kombat 3. GamePro didn't have as much. They were a little bit more variety. They had like Earthworm Jim on there, Killer Instinct, Comix Zone, Judge Dredd got a cover story, which I thought was great. That was actually a really awesome game. One of the few movie licensed games that are actually pretty fun.
GamePro always reminded me of like being the number one competitor to Nintendo Power, and they were like Nintendo Power in the fact that they were covering the games individually on the cover stories, and there was a lot more variety.
I felt they were a lot more parallel to Nintendo too, because I felt like they were like EGM. They could be very strict and sometimes just unfair on their reviews.
Yeah,
like, there was that documentary I showed you where one review just says like, "I hate the Game Boy." It's like, get that guy off of Game Boy games. And like, why? Like, I understand. Like, I get it, but it's like you're actually, you know, you're kind of trashing games that are unjust because of your bias against the Game Boy.
Yeah.
EGM, so in some instances, like I think they had really great reviews. I just take reviews as they are, right? It's like, if I feel like you're kind of bullshitting things, well, I'm just going to dismiss your opinion, right?
Yeah.
But I think GamePro and Nintendo Power were a little bit more like, you know, we accept games because they're games, they're entertainment, they're fun. So it's like you can be a little bit more loose with your scoring. Granted, we found out later that Nintendo Power is a little bit more strict, right, with some of their scoring.
Yeah, GamePro was actually the loosest.
Yeah.
Man, they got the little explodey 5 face on everything.
Yeah, like, this game's great. It's shit, but it's great.
Yeah.
And Nintendo Power is also pretty diverse. Like they had Batman and Robin in one of the cover stories. NBA Jam got one. Stargate even got one, which I think is really great.
I forgot about that. I can picture it now in my mind, but I'm like, wow, that was actually a big surprise for the time.
Weapon Lord, which was a fighting game. I forgot who was behind this one because he had worked on another fighting game before this.
This one I don't remember at all. The cover, I don't remember how it looks, and it's weird to me that GamePro also had it on a cover.
Well, because it was going to be so when I was younger, I remember being there was some hype behind it, and then it came out and no one cared about it. Like it was just not a
that makes sense.
It did not meet the hype that was preceded it, so to speak.
I feel like
I wish I could remember who was behind it though.
On Matt McMuscles, I think he did it on one of the worst fighting games.
He did,
episodes.
yeah. Because it was a weapon-based fighter, which was the whole big draw. It had this really cool art style that was really gritty. It's just, you know, it just wasn't mechanically fun. So I just think it kind of dissipated.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong Land was featured in Nintendo Power, Virtual Boy, Killer Instinct.
Oh man, that Virtual Boy, not only was it the cover, it was like the majority of the magazine issue that year.
That was the hype one, because that was August, which is when it was releasing. So it makes perfect sense.
I think they covered like every game that was coming out.
It did, and it was basically like a buyer's guide for the Virtual Boy, because again, like it launched in August. This was featured in the August issue, and what's coming up in just future months, holiday season. So what better way to hype up kids than make your whole magazine feature about this new system that you're trying to sell, which at this point, I would guess that they probably had an indicator of how it was selling in Japan, right? Because they already knew it wasn't doing well. So it's like, well, we got to do something, because if it's selling bad in Japan, we have to drum up hype for this in the US.
And this one, I remember it came with 3D glasses.
Oh, it did. I don't remember that.
And they weren't the red blue ones. They were some new one where it was clear. But when you put them on, everything in the magazine started to pop out at you.
Oh, that's freaking
all the pictures
cool.
and the words and everything.
I had no idea. I don't think I remember that at all, but that's really freaking badass they even went that far. But unfortunately, it didn't help. Like the system still failed.
People wanted the color of the magazine more than red and black.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, wait a minute. These screenshots aren't even in color. Then Mario World 2 was a cover feature, Donkey Kong Country 2, and of course, like I mentioned, Mortal Kombat 3 was featured on there. It did get another mention in May with Kirby's Dream Land 2. So that was them sort of previewing what was coming with Mortal Kombat 3. Because again, Mortal Kombat 2 was a big seller on Super Nintendo because they finally didn't cut out the blood. So Mortal Kombat, again, like it was such a big series at this point. It makes sense that it was featured all over the place. And it's just really silly when EGM, like most of their year was Mortal Kombat 3, and I'm sure they had a good reason to do that.
It's surprising to me, or not surprising, but like interesting to me, like over the years, 3s have always been like the biggest hyped.
Mm-hmm.
Even though sometimes like they aren't the best in the series, like 2 might have been the peak, or maybe 4 to come or something. But like Mario 3, Sonic 3, Mortal Kombat 3, all these 3s were coming out, and you know, hit or miss. They might have tried something new, or they might have just improved on something.
Well, I think in some instances is that the sequel is usually so freaking good and such a big leap from the original, like Street Fighter 1 to Street Fighter 2, Sonic 1 to Sonic 2.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say Mario to Mario 2 because I love Mario 2, but it's just a different game, right? But even the Mario 2 to Mario 3, you have that level of hype where it's like, well, if they've done this with the sequel, what more could they do? How much better could it get?
Metal Gear 2 to Metal Gear 3.
Yeah, right. So I think that's the thing. It's like they hit that peak and they're like, well, you're going to get further, right? And then sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Mass Effect 2, like one of the best games ever. Mass Effect 3, I love it, but not as good as 2 in some instances.
But it was hyped before.
Very much hyped.
Before people saw the ending.
Yeah. So I think it's just the nature of trilogies is like, you have to top yourself. Terminator 2, Terminator 3, which to me is like,
Terminator 3
opposite.
Had a ton of hype. I remember that.
It did. And because it was 12 years after the fact.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing. And for me, like that was just a fart. For me, a fart in church, as they call it. So it's just, I just think that when you have such a well-received sequel, you hope that the next one's gonna be as good. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just, it's more the same, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So we'll get into top selling games in the US real quick before we get into some of our awards for the year. This is a top 10. This is according to Wikipedia. So, again, I don't know how resourceful this is or where they pulled from. Number 10, best-selling game of the year was The Lion King on Super Nintendo. Mortal Kombat 2 on the Genesis was a top-selling game. NBA Jam Tournament Edition for Genesis and Super Nintendo. Those were a big release. Number 6 was Madden 96. Number 5 was Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Islands.
Nice.
Number 4, Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. Which you have to figure with that was a very late release. That was November. So it sold a lot very quickly.
Ooh, and so was Yoshi's Island was what, October?
I had that on here too, right? Was it?
It was in the quarter 4.
Yeah, it's quarter 4.
Yeah,
so October, yeah. So those sold a lot very quickly. So, and another thing to consider too is that with the PlayStation and Saturn, those are brand new systems. There's a very high cost of entry. So of course, like some of these games are just going to sell very well because they're also very, very good. And lots of people have Genesises and Super Nintendos. So number 4 is Donkey Kong Country 2. Number 3 was Killer Instinct. Huge for a fighting game in my eyes to reach a milestone like that, being top 3 in the year.
This next one is surprising, though, at number 2.
Donkey Kong Country 1.
Yeah.
Number 2 best-selling in the US from 95. So all the hype that it carried from 94 carried into this. And also, I'm sure it boosted sales of Donkey Kong Country 2.
Yeah.
And then number 1 for the year, Mortal Kombat 3. So if you're wondering why Mortal Kombat 3 was featured so much throughout magazines, this is why. It was the number 1 selling game for home video games in 95. It sold at least 2 million copies around the Super Nintendo and Genesis. And that doesn't count like I don't know if the Game Boy port came out, but I won't even count that because that game is garbage.
I was just about to ask as a joke. I was like, I wonder how much the portable versions helped in those numbers.
I think the Game Gear one was only released in the UK, if I remember right. I played it on emulator. It's garbage. And then the Game Boy one, it's just bad. So obviously these sales are for the Genesis and Super Nintendo versions. So we'll get into some of the awards. I won't go through all of them because this is pretty extensive, but just like we had our game of the year, magazines did their sort of best of the year awards. EGM did it. They had a buyer's guide in 96. So their game of the year for 95 was Twisted Metal. Kind of surprising, but again, like if you look at it now, we did a whole episode on Twisted Metal, but if you look at it now, like it's not a visually impressive game at all. But for the time, with 3D being new and the PlayStation being the new system, this was really, I'll call it sort of a killer app as the term is used back then.
It was definitely a new step in multiplayer too.
Yeah,
you just wanted to spend all the time shooting your friends in cars.
Totally different game, and it looked nothing like you'd seen before on home console, especially going from 16-bit systems. Best arcade game went to Tekken 2. Best Saturn game, Panzer Dragoon. Best Super Nintendo game was Chrono Trigger. Best Game Boy game was Donkey Kong Lands. Best Game Gear game, Star Wars Return of the Jedi. Pretty interesting that came out on the Game Gear in 95. And best Virtual Boy game, Red Alarm, which I wouldn't fully agree with. Great game, but I wouldn't fully agree with that. Game Pro, they had Editor's Choice in February 96. Best arcade game was Tekken 2. Best PlayStation game was Doom. Best Super Nintendo was Donkey Kong Country 2. Best Genesis game was Vector Man. Best Game Boy was Donkey Kong Land again. Best Game Gear, Star Wars Return of the Jedi.
Wow.
Best,
Until this list, I didn't even know that existed on Game Gear.
you know, it's funny. Like when I was going through this, I didn't realize that either because I'd seen the first Star Wars on there.
Yeah.
And I don't recall seeing
And that's about
Empire and Return of the Jedi. I don't know if there's an Empire game. I guess there has to be, right?
Yeah.
Best Virtual Boy for Game Pro was Mario's Tennis, which I don't fully agree with there. Fun launch game.
That
Fun
would
little
be-
distraction.
That would be like my second place.
Yeah, it's a pack-in. I would put that like third or fourth because I do have a second and third.
It got me excited for Mario sports games. And then when tennis came out on N64, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
finally I can see it.
It's a very competent tennis game. Like
Yeah.
It's just very basic. It's on the Virtual Boy. That's really its biggest detriment. Nintendo Power. These are fun because these are like voter or Reader's Choice Awards. From what I understand, like I think it's just like, you'd send in your little postcard and you have your votes on there and they tally them up.
And it's all, based on Nintendo products.
Yeah, it's also true too. So you won't see any Sega or PlayStation stuff in here. So the best overall winners for Super Nintendo was Chrono Trigger. This was the best game of the year voted by readers. With second was Donkey Kong Country 2, followed by Mario World 2. Best Virtual Boy game. I agree with this entirely. Warrior Land as number 1.
Yeah.
And then second and third, I don't know if I'd agree with this as much, but Mario's Tennis and Red Alarm. Red Alarm, if you're not familiar, was sort of like a Star Fox wireframe game on the Virtual Boy. It's actually pretty cool.
But it's hard as hell because everything is
Everything is
wireframe.
wireframes. Your sense of direction gets kind of funky at times.
You don't know what's coming at you, what's an enemy, what's just a wall.
Yeah, but it was really cool. It was very much like a Star Fox game. Best Game Boy was Donkey Kong Land, followed by Kirby's Dream Land 2 and Defender Joust. I don't know, that was kind of a shock. Some of the other awards here I got was Best Graphics went to Donkey Kong Country 2, followed by Killer Instinct Mario World 2. Best Sound was Donkey Kong Country 2. Best Story, Chrono Trigger. Best Sports, NHL 96.
Wow.
Best Multiplayer, Killer Instinct. Very surprising to me, but I guess considering how well that sold.
I mean, back then, you needed a multi-tap for like 4 players. So multiplayer was just
It was
basically
just 2 players.
heads up, like who's good at competing with each other.
Yeah, because second and third was Mortal Kombat 3 and NHL 96.
I'm surprised NBA Jam wasn't on there.
I know. That's I put that on my list for good reason. I'm surprised it didn't get more awards. Yeah. Most innovative in Nintendo Power was Super Mario World 2, followed by Earthbound and Ogre Battle. Best puzzle game was Zoop. You and I talked about this right before we recorded. I was like, I remember seeing this everywhere back then.
I never played a second of it.
Me neither.
But I like the logo is burned into my brain.
Yeah, it's a very significant logo and style for the ads, and I should play it because I've seen it a million times. I just never ever got to this one. Followed by Tetris Blast and Kirby's Avalanche. And most annoying feature, because I always thought it was fun that Nintendo would have like these sort of fun and goofy awards. So one of the ones I got was most annoying feature. It was Crybaby Mario and Mario World 2, which I completely agree with.
That's still true today.
It is, yeah. The other annoying feature is Nest Phone Home and Earthbound. I'm not familiar with what that means. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I thought this was a great one. This should have been number 1, frankly. The hold on and loading screens from Batman Forever.
I just love it says, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on.
We covered that in a previous episode, and you should definitely check it out because it's a fun time. We reviewed the movie and the games. But
Yeah.
we laugh about how there's loading screens in a 1995 Super Nintendo game that doesn't need loading screens. They just
But to
have
hide it, they don't say loading. They just say,
They just
hold
say,
on.
Hold on, yeah. Hold your horses, yeah. So before we wrap up the episode, Deucy, we'll get into some of our own awards. So you want to go ahead with yours? You want to go back and forth, just run through them all?
I can just run through them.
Okay, go ahead.
Like we did. I kind of set it up based on how the magazines were doing it, at least EGM
We just got we did broad strokes because each magazine had their own sort of separate categories. And
Yeah.
we just got some high level ones here.
And I agree with some of them, but then when I was looking at the launch lists or the release lists for 95, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that came out then. That's awesome. I will put that. I didn't have a best arcade because never went to the arcades in 95 when I was 10.
I would put Tekken 2 just because I don't know what else I'd put on there.
Yeah, right?
Oh, Marvel Superheroes, that came out that year too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We'll say Marvel Superheroes, Deucy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do love that one now in collections.
Yeah.
From the safety of my home. But for PlayStation, I definitely agree. Twisted Metal. That I feel like was one of the only things I played back then when it first came out.
Yeah. It was
at
a
your
huge
house.
game. Yeah.
Best Super Nintendo. Definitely Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. Runner up very closely is Yoshi's Island.
Yeah, I feel like these two, when we were kids and I would go to your house, like these were definitely the ones that were in heavy rotation for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would even play 2-player on DKC2.
We would, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Best Genesis. Now, I had to kind of do a hindsight thing because I didn't play much Genesis, and I also didn't know what came out in 95. It was whatever you had at your house.
Yeah.
But when I saw the list and I saw X-Men 2 on there, I remember when I played that for our X-Men episode, I was like, this is kind of awesome.
Yeah,
So yeah, I put that on there. And then I do remember back in the day on like Toys R Us kiosks, and I can't remember if you had it.
I rented it a few times.
Yeah, and so I played it a little bit, but I really enjoyed Vector Man.
Mm-hmm. Really cool game, really unique look. It almost looked 3D on the Genesis and very fast. It was really cool.
Yeah, it had cool graphics.
It was just really hard. That's the difference for a lot of those games back then. Yeah,
especially Genesis games.
Especially Genesis. yeah.
Best Game Boy definitely for me was Donkey Kong Land. So much so that I couldn't pull it away from my mom. Like she was totally hooked on that game.
I believe she also used the Nintendo Power to get 100%. Was that a thing she did back then? I can't remember.
She got 99%
99. That's right. Oh yeah, their bonus room you had to get for
there was a bonus room I got recently because Nintendo Power screwed up on describing where it was.
Yeah, we talked about that in the DK episode, I think, way back.
Yeah, and because of that, I had to look it up on YouTube all these years later.
See, full circle.
Yeah,
you didn't use GameFAQs.
Nope. Let's see what. Best Game Gear. I didn't realize this was 95, but it makes sense because of the movie.
Yeah, the movie came out. I kind of didn't place these either, but we could say like the Power Ranger movie games.
Yes.
Specifically for me, Genesis and Game Gear, top of the crop.
And for me, Game Gear for sure. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. Best Virtual Boy. Default was Wario Land.
It's a good choice. And it's hard to make a case for anything else unless you really love them, but Wario Land is like the best virtual game I've played. I actually finished that all the way through.
I would say Wario Land was top. For me, Mario Tennis was second, and then that Mario Clash game was kind of fun
that
for a little
3D while. Mario Bros kind of game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's see. And then I moved away from systems, and I just said best puzzle game. This is another one in hindsight, but Mario's Picross.
Mm-hmm.
I got it on the what do you call it, from the Nintendo 3DS eShop. And I put it on there.
You got it way back.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden I just got so hooked on it. Like I was playing it before bed, if I couldn't sleep, if I had to go to the bathroom, like I was just doing nothing but Picross. Once I learned the basics of it, I was starting to get really good at seeing exactly what I had to chisel away and everything. And I'm like, yeah, this is fun. Now I'm looking forward to that one you showed me recently on Switch, the Capcom one.
Yeah, so it's crazy. There's so many Picross games on Switch, and they're all different themes, or they have like the basic games that are like $17 or whatever, and those have a ton of puzzles. And they've been releasing like these different packs. Like there's a developer pack for Neo Geo, I think, and also Capcom, and it's all just like sprites from their legacy and
from the
music.
Games. Yeah,
like I played the demo and like they had Mega Man music blaring in the background. Like I think I'm gonna buy this. Like I'm not good at Picross, and I never really played it, but this is awesome.
Yeah, this is going to be right up my alley.
Yeah.
I should have got it when I was sick. I could just sit there and chisel.
It would have been perfect, yeah.
And then best sports, because I was playing a lot of sports back then, but definitely we talked about this in the sports episode. NFL Quarterback Club 96 for me, and a close follow-up was NBA Jam Tournament Edition especially, and that was mostly when we had friends over. We would play that at a time.
Oh, yeah, that's a multiplayer. I mean, that game is fantastic on its own, but it's even better multiplayer.
Yeah.
Also, I basically did the same categories as you because we want some parody here, I guess.
Yeah,
like parody, not parody. But my best PlayStation, I had to agree. Like it was Twisted Metal, but for me, these runners up are a toss up because I could have put these as the best one. WrestleMania the arcade game and Street Fighter the movie the game for obvious reasons.
Oh yeah,
right. Best Super Nintendo, I had to go with Diddy's Conquest. I had a hard time with a runner up because I was thinking like, what did I play so much back then on the Super Nintendo besides like Yoshi's Island? So I kind of went against the grain. I picked Killer Instinct because I played this so much. Like
even you got me playing it a lot. And I wasn't that good at fighter games, but I got good at the combos in that. Yeah,
and that's the thing is, again, like my buddy Alex, he I always play fighting games with him, and like we would just be trying to come up with the most insane combo strings ever. And that was part of the fun, was just sort of unwrapping the fighting system in this game and just understanding how everything worked, so you could get like the crazy announcer say Ultra or King Kong, whatever. You just wanted to hear what the next level was,
Hyper.
Right? Yeah. So I love this game so much back then. Best Genesis. This was a hard one for me because there's a lot of Genesis games that came out this year I liked. But X-Men 2 Clone Wars was definitely probably my favorite there because the first X-Men game was so difficult, and I still love it, but this was the game, like I said, where they didn't penalize you for using your powers. And it was really well done. It looks great. You play as Magneto, which was the big sort of hook there. And then the runner-up was Comix Zone, because I was hooked to that game, even though I couldn't get past like the third level legitimately. I usually had to use cheats.
I couldn't get past the first level.
Yeah, it's
legitimately.
It's so damn hard, but it was. I mean, the music and the art, so everything's just so fun about that game. It's just, it sucks that it's so difficult. Best Game Boy, had to give it to Donkey Kong Land, even though I wasn't playing too much Game Boy. Again, it was by proxy to you. Like, I would just borrow stuff or
I was
play
going to
at
say,
your house.
I feel like you borrowed it a lot too.
I did, yeah. If your mom wasn't playing it, I was able to borrow it, yeah.
Yeah, she would always be like, where's Donkey Kong? Oh, Don's borrowing it.
Yeah. And I come over, it's like, did you bring it back yet?
Yeah.
So here you go. Yeah. Best Game Gear. Again, this one was kind of hard for me too, because there's two that I played a lot, but I had to give it to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie because we were such huge Power Ranger fans, and it's such a great game. But, 1B would probably be X-Men Game Master's Legacy, because I did really enjoy this. Like, it was difficult because of sort of the labyrinth-like levels. But my brother and I did enjoy unlocking the characters, and it was really, really fun. I did put honorable mention for Sonic Drift 2, which we talked about briefly, because I did think that was such a nice little kart racer.
I also want to do, I saw this on the list, but I didn't write it anywhere. Honorable mention, Garfield Caught in the Act.
Yes. Yes. I love that game, and my brother loved that on the Game Gear. He borrowed that all the time from you. Yeah. That's a classic one. That came out in 95 too? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I
don't
was
think I
surprised.
caught that. Yeah. Best Virtual Boy, just like I said, no chance. It's Wario Land. That's the best game on the system for my eyes. Runner-up was Teller Boxer, because that is such a unique punch-out kind of game. It just sucks that it's on the Virtual Boy, because it's the screen is what it is. But it also has some of the more gorgeous sprites, but it's also because it's so simple. Like, it's just a black background. I think there's a ring. I can't remember.
Yeah.
So it could afford to do these really gorgeous giant sprites for all the sort of mech bosses that you'd fight.
Weren't you sort of kind of like in a mech pilot suit, because when you got hit, your thing would crack?
Yeah. So when you lose, your whole screen would crack.
Yeah.
So this was a very cool game stylistically. And it is one of the better Virtual Boy games. It's just one that I don't think most people talk about, but it's great, because like each D-pad was sort of your independent fists. So you had like these disembodied robot fists. It's kind of like Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it was, right?
Or what's that? Arms on Switch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say, that's reasonable to say it's in there. It's not too far a stretch. Yeah. Best puzzle. This was hard for me because I looked up some of the puzzle games that were released in 95, and I just really had little familiarity with them. I didn't play Zoop, but I've played Bust a Move and Puzzle Bobble, so I just played that for Super Nintendo. Like,
I've played so many different versions of that since then.
Yeah, like I haven't played the Super Nintendo version specifically, but you've played Puzzle Bobble once, you've played them all. Yeah. And then Best Sports. I was very outside sports at this point. It's really just stuff I play at your house. But the number one sports game, much like close to my list, I think I put number 3, NBA Jam Tournament Edition on the Genesis, because to me there was no other better sports game at that time than that, because I also didn't play very many sports games. Yeah, so that's our list for the awards of 95, which is kind of funny that we're doing like a retrospective awards show in the sense. And we also had like a pretty beefy review of 1995.
It was fun to look back and see what specifically came out in 95, because we played these for many years afterwards. Like, when you don't have the ease of access to games like we do now, you took Donkey Kong Country 2 and you played that a ton, even when N64 came out.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Yeah, so that's why it's great. It's like now we have it's literally a luxury to look back at these kind of things and be able to play with them, whether it's through an emulator, through whatever other means, whether it's a Switch Online app. There's so many ways to access just the ridiculous amount of games that have existed throughout time. So I think it's really fun we did this episode, because for us it's a little bit different, and we've always talked about doing this at some point. It was perfect for 95 because I feel like that was such a big year for games. Maybe some people don't realize it, but at least in my eyes, I think it is significant just for everything that was happening that year, just from the peaks of 16-bit going into 32-bit, and that sort of a valley of transitioning out of 16-bit into 32-bit sort of dominance, right? So I think it was a pretty fun retrospective for us to dive in and see what was happening 30 years ago, as you and I are now, 40, looking at this stuff and be like, yeah, like I remember this, remember that, like, oh, that came out. So I think this was a really fun episode, dude. I think it was a good time.
Hopefully we've inspired some of our listeners that have a new generation of their own that they're looking after. Maybe they can introduce them to some of these classics that we've talked about. Yeah,
or show them 7 covers of EGM that have Mortal Kombat 3 on them, right? The possibilities are really endless.
I was laughing at that so much because, like, for Nintendo Power, we can pinpoint which issue has what.
Yeah.
We're like, that cheat code is in the WrestleMania issue, whereas when it comes to EGM, you're like, oh, what was that story in? Was that in the third Mortal Kombat 3? Was that in the sixth Mortal Kombat 3?
I'll go the other side of the coin, because I'll say, like, do you remember what was on Nintendo Power, April 1995? Oh, I don't know. What about EGM, April 95, or maybe even August 95? Mortal Kombat 3? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, let me flip a coin. It's either Mortal Kombat 3 or Mortal Kombat 3.
Yeah. It's fun. It's it's really great looking back at that stuff, because again, like, when you're in the moment, you're just, you're observing things as they are in the moments, but it's different when you're looking back at things like, I remember this, that happened. Like, you kind of look at things more comprehensively and realize that things are more significant than you might have understood back then, and now we can look at back and like Mortal Kombat 3 was featured 7 times, but it also sold like 2 million copies.
I'd be interested to see like the 96 year and see how many more times it was featured. Now Ultimate is coming out. We better put that on the covers.
Also thinking about it too, like, I realized like the home ports of Mortal Kombat 3 did come out around October. So it's pretty incredible that it sold over 2 million in like that 3-month span. So,
and then it would bleed into 96.
Yeah, because then Ultimate came out. It's just fascinating to me that, like, of all the things that happened in 95, it still seems like MK3 was the big one.
Was Trilogy a launch for the N64?
No, it came out a little bit after, I think. And Mortal Kombat Trilogy came out on the PS1 around the same time, I want to say. Maybe it was 97. I can't fully remember. It must have been 96.
But that was going to continue on, like, even if 3 wasn't in the title, that was basically continuing on the legacy of 3.
It really was, yeah. And it actually made 3 even better than what it was.
Yeah.
Of course. Like, it was a proper iteration. It basically did what Street Fighter did. Like, it would just get better with each iteration until people got tired of it, Yeah. Hopefully you're not tired of us talking about 1995. But again, if you want to reach out to us, you can do so at LegionGamingPod@gmail.com if you want to send us some nice email. Or you can message us on Instagram or find us on Instagram and like, subscribe, and do all the cool things that all the cool kids do to make us more popular at Legion Gaming Podcast. Deucy, we have made quite the journey back to the future. Any final words for our friends going back to 2026?
Oh, yes. Happy New Year and play it loud.